Chapter 6. Beautiful Women. The wait for the letter of acceptance was surprisingly easy for Izuku. His mother was frantically cleaning everything in the apartment for the third time this week. Izuku had assured her that he made a very memorable first impression, but his mother was not dissuaded. She saw how much effort her son had put into his dream, and if she was being honest, she joined him for his jogs on the weekend. She also changed her diet as well, so that she was eating healthier, since she knew it was easier to stick to a diet and exercise if the people you lived with were doing it with you. So she noticed she had dropped a couple of dress sizes. She wasn't back to her figure when Izuku was a little child, but she did recognize that hungry look in Mr. Toshinori's eyes when she would bend over to pick things up around him. Sure, she could do it with a little less flourish, but she enjoyed the attention she was getting. It came as a surprise one day when instead of a small letter, a giant packet of forms came. Opening a diskette had fallen out. Pressing play, an image shimmered into view on the holographic projection. Greetings, new student. Am I a mouse, a dog, or a bear? My real identity is your new principal. Thank you for attending the entrance exam of your choosing. It is with great pleasure that I can add you to the ranks of fellow heroes who have passed through these halls. In previous years, we just sent out a message from one of the teachers congratulating the student on passing. However, this year we had some changes due to recent developments in quality control. So enclosed is a packet with some changes and explanations to why we need to make adjustments. This information was already delivered to the second and third year students, so only the new incoming students will need to read this before the first day. We hope to see you grow into great heroes at our school and are pleased to announce that UA will be your hero academia. End of transmission. Eek, Inko squealed out. You did it. You got into you. Oh, I have to go call Mitsuki. I have to call my boss. I have to call Yagi-san. She flittered about the room looking for the phone. Izuku just stared at the disk that had given him the news he had waited 2 weeks for. After taking a minute to process the information, he took a deep breath and asked his mother a question he had been waiting a long time to ask. Mom, could we call Dad too? His voice petering out at the end. A simple question was all it took to stop her in her tracks. She knew this day would come. She knew it would be something she would eventually have to tell her son. He was a smart boy and could see through the lies. He knew the truth, even without her telling him, but he needed to hear it from her. Even if it would break his heart, she had hoped it would be far in the future, when he had found a nice woman of his own, settled down, and she may be on her deathbed. But it was now. The ugly past rises up to strike the brilliant future as if to say, you don't deserve to be happy. She had a choice to make, lie to his face again, and he would drop it, hurting their relationship, or tell him and try to pick up the pieces again. Damn it, Hisashi, she whispered through gritted teeth. It's not fair. Mom, it's fine. You don't have to. He lied. He knew he wanted to hear it from her, that it would hurt so much. But he believed he was ready. He could take the news. His father wasn't coming back. Izuku, your father, Hisashi? Inko began, the words catching in her throat, stealing her nerves for the first time in many years. When you were 4, after you were diagnosed. He got angry, yelling and screaming about you being worthless. That something was wrong with you. That you were broken. That I was broken for making you. So, he just left. Tears flowing from her face. She couldn't even look her son in the eye with how disgusted she felt letting the words come out of her mouth. She knew it was killing him to hear that his father left because of him. She only prayed to whatever God had seen fit to give her son. Her darling baby boy hoped to not let him lose it now. Only her quiet sobs and a deep, ragged breathing could be heard. She had clenched her eyes in expectation of Izuku having a meltdown, that Hisashi, his father, gave up on him and her because he had no quirk. She waited patiently. However, the one reaction she wasn't ready for was to be pulled into a tight embrace. His voice cracked, and the emotions that had dammed themselves behind the years of denial came forth in a torrent. Mom, it's not your fault. Please don't think that. I could never blame you. You have been the best mom I could ever hope to ask for. I love you so much. You never gave up on me, and now I have a chance to show everyone, to show him how wrong he was. Izuku pulled her back by her shoulders so she could see into his eyes, almost frightened by the fire in them, something she hadn't seen since his first declaration to be a hero. That man didn't want to be with a mom who was as awesome as you. He didn't want to see you or I grow up into the strong people we are today. So, fuck him. The harsh language earning a gasp from Inko. Izuku never swore, or at least never in front of her. Taking a chance to pull her close to him again. I haven't seen him since I was 4, that was over a decade ago. All because he couldn't accept who I was. I stopped caring about what he thought once I was old enough to realize that staying up late to sit by the door hoping he came home was never going to happen. He made his choice. I am making mine. I am going to be the world's greatest hero, not to spite him, but because I want to show everyone that I am worth it, that I am not a Deku, that there is nothing wrong with me. His voice growing in octave as he gives his speech. I am going to be the best, so don't worry about me. His grip tightening. You are the best mom in the world and I love you so much. You made me the young man I am today, and I couldn't be happier. Any protest Inko had to try and reassure her son and try to help assuage the emotional breakdown were stymied in her mind as her son's declaration was filled with such power and vigor that it wasn't her comforting him but the reverse. After a decade of lies and misdirection, she had told her son that his biological father wanted nothing to do with him just because of the one thing that always gave him trouble, and he didn't give a damn. He had done it, become a man before her eyes, before she even knew it. She had been proud that Izuku had saved his friend's life, proud that he stood by the conviction to learn and make his dreams come true. There existed no words to explain how proud she was now. So, she did the only thing that could and pulled him into the tightest, most bone-crushing hug she had ever given. It wasn't until an hour later when their tears stopped, their legs having given out 20 minutes prior. She wiped her puffy red eyes. Do you still want me to try and call him? She was sure she knew the answer, but she had to check. No, he'll know what he missed when I debut to the city, Japan, the whole world. I am going to make sure everyone knows who I am. Helping her to her feet. Wow, crying together feels so much better than crying alone. Definitely my favorite way to cry. Izuku. Suddenly she was crying tears of joy, and it felt good. Let's order out, to celebrate, to good times and a greater future. Yeah, let's do that. Class 1A, where is it? A mop of green hair ran down the halls reading the signs posted above gigantic doors. How does anyone get anywhere in this place? 1C, great, I've passed this sign 3 times now. Carelessly running down the halls, Izuku came to a sudden stop after colliding with another person. Rubbing his head, ow, sorry. I wasn't paying attention. Getting up and offering his hand to other person. A slap was all that met his grip, and the person was getting up on their own. Seriously, watch where you are going. The boy met his gaze. I know. Izuku began rubbing the back of his neck, a habit he had been unable to break. I just got lost. 3rd time I ran down this hall, gaining an incredulous look that someone could be so lost in such a simple building. I just can't seem to find 1A. This only earned a pointed finger, left, right, and walked away. Turning to bow, thank you very much, and the green-haired boy took off running again. Only thought left in the stranger was how fast the smaller boy was. Until he began walking in the same direction. Tired eyes closed to stave off the sleep he wanted. Standing outside the door, which seemed larger, not that it was, but standing outside it to make a good impression was something he desperately wanted to do. He wasn't sure if he should enter with some grand declaration or a giant cloud of smoke, but he didn't want to be seen as plain. Unfortunately, all thoughts of trying to impress went out the window as he heard a sound he had become quite accustomed to. Kachin was in the room and was about 3 insults away from maiming a student. Izuku had taken some time and realized the best way to measure time was by how many insults he would spew before he got violent. So Izuku knew he really only had about 10 seconds before the fire brigade and SWAT had to come and wrangle his friend. Kachin, please don't blow anything up on your first day. Izuku pleaded while entering. TCH, fuck you. I'll blow up whatever I want to. However, he did stop himself from immolating his deck. For some reason, the blue-haired boy from the exam was in front of his desk scolding Bakugo. This offered an explanation as to the mood Katsuki was in this soon into the morning. Taking in the sight of his different classmates, Some desk empty as Midoriya wanted to be early to not be late in case he had gotten lost as he had. He obviously knew Kachin. The blue-haired boy took the combat exam with him. Something about him reminded him of the pro-hero Ingenium. There was another boy he recognized with the bicolored hair. Except this time from the front, he could see a nasty scar that adorned the left side of his face. He didn't want to be rude and stare, but didn't want to look away like he was disgusted, so he slowly began scanning the room to see who else had made it into the class. The tall girl with the long dark ponytail was also seated in a desk next to the bicolored boy. At getting a good look at her, his only thought at the moment was, big. She had some of the largest breasts he had ever seen. Not counting empty lady since proportion matters, he's not an animal. But he knew he would get in trouble if he stared too long. So as he was going to look away, he made eye contact with the girl. Growing a faint blush, she waved to him, and this caused his own far more vibrant blush to cover his cheeks, and he could only give a small wave in return. The multi-limbed boy in the mask was standing by the window talking to the bird-headed boy. Another blonde boy was talking to a floating school uniform. So it became aware that the invisible girl had managed to pass, and this boy with a tail was getting to know her. The frog-like girl was also sitting in a desk, like a frog. And again, as the opportunity to actually take in the features of everyone around him, he could see she was very cute. Recognizing him from the story he was telling the last time they had met, she waddled over to him. Karo, it's good to see you again. I'm Tsuyu Azui, call me Tsu. Her tongue poking in between her lips. So cute, was the only thought he could muster. I am Mizuku Izuriya. Izuriya Miduku exhaling. Understanding there was no way to salvage this. I'm Izuku Midoriya. If you want me to call you T.S. Tsu, even saying her name made him feel dirty, like it was a violation of the natural order to call a girl, a cute one no less, by her name. Then see calling me Izuku, it's only fair. From the combat exam, you were the only one to beat the instructor, weren't you? Came a voice behind him. It seemed the blue-haired boy had gotten bored of talking to the brick wall that was Katsuki. However, this boy seemed to have trouble with speaking in a reasonable volume, so it seemed everyone heard this. Finding himself under the gaze of everyone, he did what he had always done, shrink and panic. It wasn't like that. He began stammering. Whatever, everyone was asleep at the end, so who knows what the nerd scored. Came Bakugo's angry tone to the notion that Izuku had done better on the exam than him. What are you talking about, you delinquent? The postings for the exams were on the notice board. Midoriya-san had the passing score in the practical, 5th in the written, which puts him at the top of the class. He began waving his arm around. His practical is the only one with a pass on it. Everyone else had time, or a percentage score, for their tasks. So he is the only one to meet every expectation. This caused Ida to return to berating Bakugo's attitude, so he failed to properly introduce himself. Instead, some of the other students came over to introduce themselves. I'm Tokoyami Fumikage. I was unsure about the validity of your story during the written, but since you have the skills to last at least 60 seconds against a pro, it seems to err towards truth that you in fact have experience against villains. Tokoyami's statement earning a gasp from some of the other students who hadn't heard Izuku's tale. Todoroki's eyebrow raised. Even he couldn't claim to have fought villains, his father, but the law says he a hero, so it apparently doesn't count. As other students began filing into the class, more of them wondering why one student seemed to have attracted most of the attention are instead either joining that group or watching in morbid curiosity that two boys were seconds away from coming to blows over feet on a desk. This made it so a purple-haired boy found it easy to slip in the class without notice. A slam on the desk drew everyone's attention, and what looked like a giant caterpillar had begun its rampage of solving the city's homeless problem. A face was peeking out of a giant sleeping bag. It took you all almost 10 seconds to quiet down. Get to your seats and pray I don't expel all of you like I did to last year's class. This got everyone into their assigned seat in record time, as no one wanted to be expelled or be responsible for everyone else getting expelled. Talk about fast way to make enemies. Now, I had originally planned to make you go outside and run laps to determine the weak link and expel that person, but the principal has made it mandatory that all first years attend the orientation, as the information might actually be useful this time. So after that you get to meet the other teachers, go be their problem. I'm taking a nap. This explanation left no one with a positive impression of their homeroom teacher, How could someone so lazy and judgmental possibly be a fair instructor if he would just expel them for annoying him? But nonetheless, they all got up to head to the auditorium, meeting the 1B students along the way. Seeing familiar locks of orange hair, Izuku politely pushed himself through the crowd to greet the young lady he had relied on, Kendo-san. He cried out, "Oh, Midoriya-san." Itsuka turned and slowed her pace. "It's so good to see you. After everyone woke up from Midnight Sensei's quirk, you were already gone. But I saw on the notice board that you passed, top of the class already." Ribbing him a little, sure know how to make a first impression on a girl. She got the desired result as Izuku's cheeks turned a contrasting pink to his normal complexion. "It wasn't that cool," he deflected. "Are you kidding? You were the coolest, catching her whip and the way you were taunting her," she gushed. "It was like you had done that a million times before." Well, I did practice my routine over the years." He tried to humbly accept the compliments. "So you also practiced dancing, because that swordsmanship was incredible," she piled on, knowing it just teased him more and more. "You were so good. You have to take me out dancing sometime." "Yes, sure. I see. It can do that," unaware of what he had just agreed to. Itsuka also realizing she inadvertently asked him out while teasing him. Now it was her turn to be flustered. But later, after we get settled into classes, yeah?" She noticed he nodded at that, unsure of what to make of the boy who would stutter and trip over his words at compliments, but not understand when he just agreed to go on a date. However, they arrived at the auditorium before any more thought could be put into this discussion. They were again separated into their classes, and Izuku ended up sitting next to the ponytail girl. Realizing he was next to another beauty, he tried to stammer out an introduction, "Hi, I'm," only to be cut off. "Izuku Midoriya, or do you prefer the other two names you shared instead?" She giggled to him, flushing his face even more. "I'm Momo Yaoyorozu. It's a pleasure to meet you." Extending her hand to him, he took it in his. Her thoughts were on how tough his hand felt, but also how gentle his grip was. Izuku, however, had short-circuited and began mumbling, "So soft and such a cute laugh. Why are pretty girls talking to me so much? This never happened before." Unaware that Momo was one of the few people who was able to process a lot of information at one time, so she could understand everything he was saying, her blush overcoming her face as she received numerous compliments from the strange young man holding her hand. Suddenly aware that she was still holding his hand, she quickly let go, which pulled Izuku out of this trance as he realized that the pressure was gone. Momo felt saddened for some reason that the warmth was gone from her grip. But the principal taking the stage on a podium that could only be described as doll-sized. He tapped the microphone and began. "Hello and welcome first-year students to UA High. I am the principal Nizu. Behind me are the staff members that will be teaching you in your first year at this academy. There are a few announcements that need to be made. There seemed to be much confusion from other year students and alum from the changes that I have implemented for the new year. So, to help clear up confusion, I have a presentation." This received some nods from the students and also from a few of the teachers, as well as the principal was surprisingly tight-lipped as to what motivated him to bring such sweeping and widespread changes to their structure and curriculum. Pulling a remote from a breast pocket on his little suit, he pressed a button causing a screen to descend from the ceiling. The same button also started a projector. A third press caused a video to play. Some students questioned how one button controlled all this. But since the remote was just a gray block with a single large red button, no one questioned it for too long. They have seen enough cartoons for that to ever make sense. The video, however, had everyone's attention as the sounds of fire, explosions, and screaming were suddenly resounding off the walls of the spacious auditorium. Izuku froze at the acknowledgement of what this was. It was a closed-circuit feed of a camera that had caught the fated second encounter with the slime villain. Everyone watched in horror as the villain caused considerable damage to the alleyway. They all saw as the villain used a head of blonde hair trapped in its clutches to cause fires and destroy property. A very angry growl was heard from the back of the room. No one turned to look as they watched a head of green hair run in. A girl screamed, as she recognized who that was. Turning her head to stare intently at Izuku, this disruption caused many of the teachers and other students to look at him as well, making him incredibly self-conscious as people began to piece together what this implied. Momo gripped Izuku's hand and squeezed it tightly on reaction to the frightening imagery of a desperate Izuku. Using his quirk on the villain and struggling to pull Katsuki free, they could see the fear and pain in his eyes even from the distance the camera was at. A few more screams as they watched Katsuki's fist careen at speed they didn't think were possible for a fist to move towards Izuku's head. Itsuka had shut her eyes to not see the impending doom of a person she had just been staring at. Momo's fingers had begun to dig into Izuku's flesh as she had never seen something so scary in her life. Until a laugh broke it all. "I am here." All Might's sudden voice brought more relief to the room than they thought possible. The sudden shift in the video as the force from the wind generated by his punch sent the camera's view skyward as they watched clouds form and begin raining. A roaring cheer from the student, and even a few teachers began clapping as they realized everything was fine. The video feed cutting out. The principal turned back to the student populace. "Now who wants to tell me what was wrong with that video?" Quiet murmuring from the students as they tried to understand what he meant. "It's all right, I'll explain." While young Midoriya's, he gestured, only serving to make him feel even smaller. Actions were nothing short of heroic. There were 4 other heroes at the scene, conveniently leaving out All Might being in his small form just off the camera's view. And yet a young man, who it came to our attention had been previously attacked by this same villain not even an hour before, was the only one to act. All the heroes present were graduates at one time or another of this very school. It shamed me greatly to see so many heroes just standing around and waiting for someone else to, as they told me, with a better quirk, to solve this problem. His small form and normally stoic face seemed larger and more menacing. He continued his monologue. "I had originally planned to seek action against those heroes and make sure they had extra training, but then I realized this was partially my fault. I re-examined what we were teaching the students and came to the conclusion that the structure of the curriculum suited putting graduates in a class that taught them how to use their quirk in a specific manner." Taking a sip of tea to soothe his throat, I then met with the boards and faculty to redevise a new structure that would prepare the students to better handle more diverse situations, and after some more persistent faculty requested, the entrance exam for the hero course was redone completely. It was unfair that fighting robots left those whose quirks not suited for direct combat left behind, and we potentially lost out on amazing young children who can do more than fight mindless machines. Aizawa straightened up at the acknowledgement that he had gotten the principal to cave to his demand. He also got a stern talking to about weaponizing his colleagues for the sole purpose of annoying someone. It took weeks, but using All Might to serve him a nice, hot cup of tea, which was neither nice, hot nor even tea, was what broke him. Sure, he had a mountain of fresh paperwork to do, but seeing the rodent come into his office, disheveled and stammering about that mountainous oaf being forbidden from using a kettle, was worth it. As such, we also looked at the way we structured the school as a financial institution. It was made aware that the prestige of the school was enough that people could come from all over the country and even a few other countries to just attend. So we devised a dormitory system to assist those whose finances or travel time would be a hindrance to their education. This is to allow students to focus on their education and not on if they are being a burden to anyone. This was brought up rather fiercely by our newest, but surely most prestigious faculty member as requirement of his hiring, who I will introduce now. Making a motion to the door, "Please give a warm welcome to IT is me, All Might, our new teacher." "You talked over me," Nizu hissed, covering the microphone with his hand. "Sorry, I got my K wrong," All Might said, crouched to floor so he was eye level with the principal. Everyone could hear what was being said, but knew to pretend they weren't. Momo heard a second hiss and realized she had Izuku's hand in a death grip. "I'm so sorry, Izu. I mean Midoriya-kun-san. Midoriya-san." Letting go, he reflexively massaged the hand to try and get blood flowing into it again. "It's fine, Yaoyorozu-san. It must have been scary to watch," he said, making eye contact and beaming a smile at her. "Anytime you get scared, I'll be there to make it go away. I promise." Again unaware of what he was doing to these young women, this declaration only caused her to blush profusely. Izuku, unaware that a few other students had seen the interaction and heard what he had said, he was marked as an enemy for numerous reasons. The students who were at the combat exam remembering him and Midnight Sensei's interaction are now fuming that he was making moves on more beautiful women. While those two were caught up in their moment, a certain orange-haired girl was conflicted. She was watching the exchange between Izuku and this new girl, taking in her everything. She felt very self-conscious. This girl was gorgeous, had soft features, perfect complexion, and a very generous endowment. It made her feel small, ugly, and not worth it if someone like this was pursuing Izuku. The only solace was that she wouldn't have to see their exchange for very long before this assembly was over, as she felt her face burning. After a discussion on how dorms would be provided, and that forms had already been sent home, the principal started on some new rules. Sexual harassment policy, grading, and a brief introduction into the different ways the class would interact. No longer are the classes so nebulous and closed off. Both 1A and 1B would be doing joint training, with the support and business courses overseeing on a regular basis to better learn the different students' quirks, to suit the next generation of heroes. As the classes headed back to their homerooms, Izuku pushed through the crowd to catch up to Itsuka. She either didn't hear him calling for her or chose not to slow down, so, while he could get in trouble for using his quirk without permission, he did slip into a doorway and out one further ahead to cut off Itsuka. "Kendo-san, I wanted to talk to you," Izuku began, not noticing the hurt in her eyes. "I wanted to say I'm sorry. It wasn't fair for you to see that." Itsuka stopped suddenly. The other students began filing around the pair. "I know it was frightening to see that video, and I'm sorry if that scared you." Itsuka puffed out her cheeks. "That isn't what I'm upset about." She pushed him back and stormed off into her classroom. "Kendo-san." He walked into the door. "I'm sorry. I don't know what I did wrong. Please tell me. I'll try to help." The door opened and the homeroom teacher, Vlad King, stared down at him. "Go to your homeroom, runt." The firmness in the voice made Izuku step back, but he wasn't a coward anymore, at least not a complete one. "Just tell Kendo-san, I'm sorry, I don't know what I did wrong. And I didn't mean to hurt her." Izuku stared right back into the larger man's eyes. He didn't move from his spot until the door was shut in his face. As he slowly sulked away, the inside of the room he left was eerily quiet. Itsuka was on the other side of the wall and heard Izuku confess. Instead, whispers from some of the students. This started the spread of rumors about Izuku that would take quite some time to settle down. All because one blonde boy enjoys making people suffer. As Izuku entered his classroom, he was barely aware that he had come in late, despite being ahead of everyone else, and that everyone had their eyes on him. "Midoriya-san, take your seat. We are beginning introductions, so that each of you at least know the bare minimum of the other 19 students who will be with you for the next 3 years, or until you get expelled." As the students started to introduce themselves, it went around the room until it came back to Izuku. Standing up, he cleared his throat. "My name is Izuku Midoriya. As you all saw, I kind of started a bit of a ruckus. This got a few chuckles from the students, and I am a magician." If a few chuckles were all he got for starting a revolution at the greatest school in the country, claiming to have magical powers sent most of the entire class into an uproar of laughter that Aizawa couldn't settle down. Surprisingly, the only people not laughing at that declaration were Bakugo, Yaoyorozu, and Todoroki. They either had seen it firsthand or had enough presence of mind to know that someone who was able to do what they have seen wouldn't be making such a bold claim if he couldn't back it up. "Settle down, Aizawa," now regretting taking in the one student who clearly is going to be a problem to every person he meets. "Now if everyone has gotten that out of their system, we can continue." He had a few glances his way as the other students introduced themselves, until a tired-looking boy with purple hair stood up. "My name is Hitoshi Shinso, and my quirk is Brainwash. Anyone that responds to me, I can control them to do whatever I want." He stood waiting for the response he usually gets. "Don't brainwash me. I bet you could do a lot of perverted stuff with that. Don't only villains have mind control?" Except the first thing he heard was, "That's so badass." Blinking in surprise, he turned to the person who said what he never heard. It came from the resident magician. Before he could even question, he was assaulted by a verbal storm. You could end hostage situations when they list their demands. People in a panic in need of rescue become docile enough to transport. Someone couldn't even lie to if you told them not to. You could investigate crimes and get witness statements from anyone. This caught the entire class off guard except for Katsuki, who had aimed his book at Izuku's head. The blow knocked him out of his mind. Ow, Kachin, that hurt. What did I tell you about doing that to every loser who has a loser quirk you meet? This comment did not go unnoticed by anyone. Bakugo didn't respect anyone. But why a book? Because you'll disappear my shoe if I threw that like last time. Hee true. Aizawa having enough of this exchange. Bakugo detention for throwing school property. Izuku, don't do whatever that was again. Or at least wait until I don't have to see it. Shinso, sit down. Introductions are over. Go to lunch. The first day was going well for most students. Izuku had forgotten what he could have done to hurt Itsuka until he saw her hair. He pushed himself through the crowd, clearing a path that he didn't realize that a few others were following him down. Kendo-san, wait, please, can I share lunch? Have lunch with you? His habit of making himself small as possible when nervous, doing double duty to make him look as cute and innocent as possible. For some reason, she couldn't explain, she acquiesced to his request. After she had grabbed her food from lunch rush, she found Izuku waving to her from a table in the corner. She sat down, and before she could utter a word, Izuku began profusely apologizing. I'm so sorry. I don't know what I did to make you mad, but I'll do whatever it takes to make it up to you. I don't want to lose the first real friend I ever made. Please, I'm sorry. Itsuka could only sit stunned as she stared at the young boy, who looked on the verge of tears. Thinking to herself, first real friend. How does a kid this nice have no friends? But no friends. What about that other girl he was holding hands with? Realizing she had to calm him down before she could do anything. Midoriya-san, I have no intention of stopping being your friend, and to be fair, I may have overreacted. I might have misunderstood when you were holding that other pretty girl's hand. I shouldn't be jealous of your girlfriend. A second passed. Then another. Finally, everything started clicking in Izuku's head. Girlfriend, no. No, Yairose-san isn't my girlfriend. I was holding her hand because she got scared and I apologized because it was me in the video scaring her. So I promised that if she got scared again I would do what I could to make her feel safe. Izuku started speaking faster, trying to explain himself. Sure, she's pretty and I wouldn't mind dating her, but you're pretty too and really nice and I would like to date you too. Again, in the way that only an anime protagonist can do it, confessed to two girls at the same time without being aware of it. He froze as he realized that at some point during the conversation Momo had sat down to his left and was now stunned at the sudden confession that he had interest in not one but two girls. At some point all the blood in Izuku's face had abandoned their job of supplying blood to his brain and decided to start sending it to his legs in preparation to run very far and very fast. Until everything came crashing down as the two beauties began to laugh together, holding onto each other for support. Izuku slumped into his seat, emotionally drained over his confession. Momo was the first to regain composure. Oh, Izuku, it's sweet that you think we are so stunning that you want to confess to us this soon, and it certainly helps that you have a way with words that makes a girl swoon, but we barely know each other. Let's get settled into classes before we start anything with anyone. How about that? Izuku could only nod as his brain refused to allow his body to begin speaking for the remainder of lunch. So Momo and Itsuka spent the time comparing how introductions went in each class, what they thought of the changes brought about by their third's behavior, how the different entrance exams were. Momo explained that for the utility exam she applied for, she had to demonstrate the versatility of the objects she could create, and Itsuka demonstrated her quirk and shared what it was like to fight a pro hero. They chatted and Itsuka shared what it was like to watch Izuku use his quirk. And like he wasn't even there, she described how cute he looked in his magician's outfit and how handsome and cool he was when he dueled Midnight Sensei. Not one of them noticed that someone with blonde hair had been extending an ear out to catch their conversation. It's so useful that during lunch nobody bothers to check who's bumping into who. It's a veritable smorgasbord of quirks for me to pick from. How best to use this? The troublemaker called Monoma schemed. As the lunch period was ending, Izuku excused himself to the bathroom. He needed some space from the two beauties to clear his head, and the bathroom would allow him to cool down and splash some water on his face. This left the two girls alone to discuss something important. Itsuka asked first, "You have a crush on Izuku too, don't you?" Momo, blushing, nodded. He's so gentle and I truly believed him when he said he would keep me safe. No one has ever said something like that to me. So, I am crushing hard. You? Itsuka covered her face with her hands. They had grown giant in her nervousness. He calmed me down when I was freaking out at the exam. I was ready to just run out, damn the consequences, but he noticed and put on a smile and made me feel like it was okay. Yaoyorozu, I want to date him, but I don't want to put him in a position where he has to choose. I don't want feelings hurt or anything. Itsuka, me either, but I don't know if I can be okay with him dating another girl at the same time. How about we just try to be friends first, before we decide if we want to get into a relationship with him or anybody? I think I could do that. Maybe I'll grow into the idea, or maybe we find someone else. It's probably for the best that we don't rush into this. We're two young, beautiful ladies, and we have 3 years at this school, so it's fine to take some time. The bell rang, signifying that the period was over. Unknown to them, the ear had pulled itself into the body and a smirk. I can use this, whispered the boy. The rest of the day went by in a daze for Izuku. He was so confused that he had not only confessed to one girl, but two, and they were both stunning, and he didn't get rejected outright. What brought him out of it was that Kachin kept drawing his attention if he zoned out for too long. So he was mentally there to hear that All Might was going to hold the first joint class exercise tomorrow between 1A and 1B. He hoped to talk to All Might since he had last seen him before the exam day, but he had been very busy with getting situated into the new school as a teacher. So maybe after school he could get him to come by and answer some questions, not all of them school-related. But he was emboldened even if he didn't seem so to the casual observer. Izuku had made not one but 2 friends today, so he was over the moon with excitement and couldn't wait to talk to his mother about his great first day. Author's notes. Welcome back. It's been about a week. Thank you to everyone for all the support. I understand what you mean by I need to work on my grammar and breaking up the different paragraphs. I checked over for spelling, so hopefully I didn't mix homophones again. First off, I had this thought half awake that Aizawa screwed his class in canon. First day, ignores the orientation, makes the students spend at least a full class period outside, then just sends them home. Sure, it may be very American of me to think. On the first day, it's more of meet your teachers and get an understanding of the class. So to me, what Aizawa did made no sense. Second on the list, Mineta has been removed. Personally don't care for his character, so instead I just removed him in place of adding Shinso earlier into the story. There are probably a few people who agree Mineta, besides being a gag character, serves no purpose other than being a pervert. So to me, I didn't want to add him into the class, as I would most likely just ignore him outright. So anyone who was irritated about that, I'm sorry, but Great Boy is out. Next, Inko and Izuku had a moment. I hope it was heart-wrenching. That is what I was going for in writing that part. This also gets Hisashi out of the way. Second, it allows me to bring him back at a later date. Also, for the people who might think, wow, Momo, Itsuka and Izuku went through that too quickly. The problem that Izuku had gotten into was something that would be solved if he just explained himself instead of how normally the story has a "it's not what it looks like" moment. Then it never gets resolved until something stupid happens months later. Instead, I wrote people as emotionally mature and willing to listen as people should do. So Izuku, who would be able to explain. However, I also follow another important rule. Coincidences can get you into trouble, they cannot get you out of it. So when Izuku explained, he also confessed, and by coincidence Momo was also there to hear it. Yes, Monoma was the other person following behind Izuku. Also, I am trying to be realistic. Both girls are aware of their feelings, they know why they have them. They also think it's too early to be devoted to a relationship when they just started hero school. So the romance, while blossomed, will need time to grow. So the girls will have time to get to know each other and Izuku before any real decisions get made. No, this will not turn into a harem. Already had someone ask, and I assure them it will not. At worst, Izuku will just be dating 2 girls at the same time. Next chapter will discuss the initial housing situation. All Might's first class with 40 students instead. So there will be a difference in teaching this. They'll probably top off with the first night in the dorms. All is in way to prep for the USJ, but if I'm as good a writer as I think I am, I won't be there for 3 more chapters. We need some slice of life before we stumble into the pain and suffering. I love to hear what people think about the development. I will reread my previous chapters and not to reassess where I am taking this story. Hopefully I improve the quality as I go. This chapter wasn't nearly as long as the previous 2. Sorry to disappoint on that front. Brutal. Reviews. Losing track of thoughts for theses notes. so I'm going to end it here. Chapter 7. Dinner and a Movie? Izuku immediately regretted telling his mother about his first day of hero school/high school. Everything was going great. He talked about his classmates, his teacher, her just nodding while standing over a pot. Then he told her about the orientation, about the changes to the school and why. So we were sitting in the auditorium when the principal showed a video to the class, he said, petering off, hoping she doesn't pick up on it. Oh really, sweetie? Already showing old videos in class instead of teaching? Well, that's high school for you, she chirped. A high school, the wonderful time when teenagers are filled with raging hormones. Peer pressure is abounding, and the underpaid teachers just want to drink themselves under the desk to get through the day. What was it about? The solar system, or maybe a nature documentary? Damn it, she noticed. Clearing his throat, he spoke softly so she might not hear it. So, remember about 10 months ago, there was that incident with the sludge villain? He could hear he slowed down her stirring. She wouldn't ever forget the day her son nearly died. Well, as it turns out, there was a camera that caught the whole thing. And the principal saw it, and then decided to show it to everyone. Inko knew now was the time to get more involved in the discussion. Turning the stove to a low simmer, she wiped her hands and walked over to her son. Sitting down across from him, she grabbed his hands and stared into his eyes with a concerned look. Did it remind you and scare you a bit? Izuku, maintaining eye contact, quickly shook his head. No, it didn't scare me, Kachin was angry, but I think it scared a lot of the classmates and my two new friends, Momo-chan and Itsuka-chan. As he continued on about how it wasn't fair that his actions caused them such worry, or how he needs to think of a proper way to apologize, he missed the most important factor. He had just stated that he had two new friends, that he referred to both of them as Chan. Inko knew this day would come. Her baby boy has more friends. When he finally brings himself back, he realizes that his mother is beaming. Mom, what's wrong? Grasping him into a hug. Oh, my baby has friends. Tell me what those two boys like are, she rambled. Do they treat you nicer than Katsuki-chan? He's a good boy at heart, but he's so rough with you. Well, they are both really smart. They like to tease me, but in a fun way. Izuku began. They both are really pretty. At this point, Inko was very confused. She had seen Izuku's browser history. She knows he's straight. So why he would refer to boys as pretty, unless... Izuku again missed a warning sign. His mother was now sporting the largest grin that could fit on her face. Her baby boy, her little man, had two girlfriends. She began shaking in her chair so much that it rattled. This couldn't be missed by Izuku. Mom! It was too late. My baby has girlfriends. The shriek could be heard for miles. Oh no. Izuku finally understood the hell he unleashed upon himself. He just told his mother he had two girls. That were his friends, and he thought they were cute. He had to act fast. Mom, they aren't my girlfriends. Haha, situation expertly defused. He smiled smugly. Of course not, sweetie. They aren't yet. And if I have anything to say, they won't be the last. Yeah, they won't be the last. Wait. What? He panicked. Mom, what are you talking about? Of course we'll start you off with two girls. Then we can work on wrangling more girls for you, sweetie. Her eyes glistening with intent. You'll get all the girls knocking down your door with mommy's help. This is getting out of hand fast. Have to use my last resort. I heard Yagi-sensei mumble something about asking you out last week. Sorry, All Might. It was you or me. Forgive me. This worked to get Inko to stop her machinations to have her son acquire a harem of young women. Mom, please, they are just friends. We all agreed that it's too early to start a relationship since the school just began. And honestly, how many women could I possibly entertain in that manner? I think two would be the most. Plus, I don't even know how to get girls to like me that way. He spat out his response fast enough, so his mother couldn't get a word in to disrupt him. In a huff, fine. I won't work my magic to make you the daddy those girls would want. Izuku is burying his face in his hands. He doesn't need to hear how his mom wants him to hook up with a bunch of girls. But I will not allow you to be at that school without a means to win a girl's heart, and since tonight is the last night I get you consistently, I'm going to crash course you through it. What do you mean, last night? He air quoted. Oh, did I forget to tell you? I signed the form to allow you to live at the school's dormitories. She answered. Isn't that great you get to live at the school? That's awesome. Izuku began thinking of all the ways he could use the facilities there to practice, access to so many resources he wouldn't normally have. On top of some independence from his mother, a chance to show her that he's growing up. But what do you mean crash course? It was 6 hours later when Inko let her son go to bed. He had recipes for breakfast, lunch, and dinner memorized, which was the easy part. Then how to be a proper gentleman, topped off with the talk. Izuku's only savings grace was that Inko had spent the day packing up his stuff for him, so he just had to get to school, which they had canceled the first half of classes to give the students a chance to get their rooms set up and familiarize themselves with the building. Izuku made sure to arrive bright and early. When he got to the school, he noticed most of the students had boxes, bags, and other methods to bring in their belongings. Since the school provided most of the furniture, no one needed to bring their own, unless they wanted to. Izuku taking in, there were quite a few. Kachin wasn't one of them, though. He did see Momo-chan and Itsuka-chan chatting with each other. Taking in the rest, a girl with a round face and brown, bob-like hair had quite a few boxes, leading him to question how she was going to carry them all up. A few more people, it seemed like there were around 20 or so, since the Hero Course students would all be in the same dorm room, which once Izuku saw it, was in awe. It was bigger than any hotel he had seen. It was easily 7 stories, could probably house at least 60 people easily. Even though there were only 2 hero courses, it seems like they planned in case they added a third. Aizawa-sensei was there to greet them, somehow looking even more tired. Must not be a morning person. Good morning, students. I am Aizawa Shoyuda. I am the homeroom teacher for 1A. And because I apparently keep making losing bets with my coworkers, I have the privilege of being here so early, to make sure you can get situated into your new rooms. He lazily gestured to the large building. This is where you will be staying. Curfew is at 10 p.m. Unless you get permission, breakfast and lunch will be served in the cafeteria if you so wish to eat there. Dinner is on the rest of you to figure out. Leave all antics and problems until after classes are over so that none of you are my problem anymore. This got a few chuckles from some and worried glances from others. Some had a better understanding of his darker humor than others. Since morning classes are canceled, you will have one class today, and that will be Foundational Hero Studies. So be at test site Gamma by 2 p.m., he grunted out. I'm going back to sleep. As he shuffled off, leaving the other students a tad confused on what to do as he left them at the door. When they walked in, they saw a very large and spacious common room, with an equally large dining room and kitchen ensemble which stood bare but had large refrigerators, freezers, and 3 stove/oven combos for microwaves. They obviously built this to handle having a few dozen teenagers in the building. There was also a large stack of papers sitting on one of the coffee tables. After distributing them, it was a map of the building. Boys' and girls' sleeping quarters were separated, including a laundry room for clothes and study rooms that seemed soundproof for use. The dorms had separate bathrooms which looked large enough to fit a sauna in them, which they did have. After noting down the rooms, the students were left with the idea of where their rooms were assigned to them. Izuku watched as most of the people just walked over to start unpacking. He noticed the brunette from earlier had just picked up the mountain of boxes and was carrying it. He didn't notice any strain from her, but she looked a little green in the face, so he noted she was either really strong or she did something to the boxes. Momo and Itsuka finally took notice of the green-haired boy and came over. Midoriya-kun, did you forget to bring your belonging with you? Momo questioned first. Yeah. Or are you one of those minimalists? Kendo inquired. Realizing why it was confusing, everyone else seemed to have at least 5 boxes worth of stuff, and all Izuku had was the clothes he was wearing and his all-might cap on. Right? Oh, sorry. He began apologizing. It's actually all in here. Taking off his hat and presenting it as if that was answer provided any clarity. No offense, Izuku, but I saw your quirk at the entrance exam. It's something like telekinesis, Itsuka asked. So, I don't get how you would fit more stuff in a hat. What would that even be? Extra-dimensional space, Yaoyorozu answered. Do you have multiple quirks, Midoriya-kun? People with multiple quirks were incredibly rare. Some had a quirk that did 2 things, but they were somewhat related. Todoroki's was one, but it governed thermal regulation, so it was still a single quirk. Telekinesis and extra-dimensional space were 2 very different quirks. Nope, he gave a quick reply, grinning like an idiot the whole time. Don't even really have one if you want to be technical about it. But don't worry, I got everything I need. Come by my room after you get set up, and I can demonstrate a few things for you. Yairo-chan, since you didn't see me during the entrance exam. Izuku offered. You are also more than welcome to come to Kendo-chan, since you had some questions too. He gave a soft smile to them, causing them to blush lightly. Why yeah, I'd like that, Momo responded. Me too. I want to see more tricks you got. Itsuka answered. Great, after that I can make us some lunch if you want. Izuku smiled brighter. Since we are going to be living on our own, I figured I should get practice in on being more independent, so I need to practice making meals, especially if dinner is going to be left up to ourselves. Don't want to just eat frozen or microwave meals. Least not with the diet I'm on. His forethought caught them off guard again. It had slipped their minds that they would be making their own meals at least once a day, and they didn't know how reliable the other students would be, except maybe that one boy with the large lips, Rikito, who got really excited about how much baking he would be able to do with such a well-stocked kitchen. We'd love to, Midoriya and Kendo replied, Momo nodding with her. It sounds wonderful, especially if you are as good a cook as I hope you are. Winking, causing Izuku to blush with them. They quickly parted ways, and when the two ladies made it to their side, they realized they were also flatmates, having adjacent rooms. It only took them a while to unpack. Momo had made a system of it, and Kendo had no problem sorting out what she needed the most. Since they would have plenty of time after class to finish up, they both headed over to see Izuku's room, wondering how he was going to decorate without anything to decorate with. Surprising both of them, when they got to his room, they saw as he was pulling his entire arm out of his hat and had a box that seemed much too big to fit into the brim of the cap he had along with it. Noticing the two ladies, he set down the box. Wow, you two were fast. Just that organized, or am I that slow? He chuckled. For some reason, he felt at ease around the two girls, so his more nervous nature took a back seat so he could have real conversations with them. So, you do have two quirks. Kendo amazed. That's incredible. And so amazingly useful. No wonder you topped the class. I don't see how anyone could have been ready for you to do so much in such a short amount of time. Momo said. But all you did was get your boxes out. How are you going to unpack? Don't worry, I saw this in a movie once. He pulled his hat inside out, making it a tall blue wizard's cap with stars and moons on it. Pulling up his sleeves, he readied his hands with some shaking. It earned some giggles from the girls until the objects in his box started to dance and march their way on shelves. This was an amazing show that had the girls wide-eyed as he unpacked in under a minute. Throwing both of his hands into the air a few times, and everything stopped moving. Had to do that, otherwise it would have just kept going. That would have been a mess. That was amazing.
Midoriya-kun.
Momo stammered out. She had never seen such a display of control before, and to add it all into what seemed like a performance only made it that much more impressive. Kendo started clapping with her giant hands. Holy cow! I knew you could get into it when you were at the entrance exam, but to still put on a show for us now. You are definitely a keeper. Bowing to his enraptured audience of two. Thank you so much. I enjoy putting smiles on people's faces, especially your two beautiful faces. What are you doing flirting now? Is it just when I perform, or something? His comment made the two girls blush. But since I took you to see a show, let me treat you two to lunch, and I'll call this date a success. Braino, what is going on with you? Both girls were turning a deep shade of crimson at his very smooth words. But they couldn't find a response. They did go into a boys' room and see a show. Now it seemed like they just need a meal, and it would be a date, in a different order, but one nonetheless. So, they all silently made their way to the dining room, unaware that they had been watched from the hall of one of the rooms further down. So, that's how it is, day one, and he already has his floozies into his room. From the sounds coming from the mop head's room, they got a little friendly. This is perfect. He slowly shut his door and finished his assignment in the meantime. As the two girls whispered to each other about Izuku, he was quickly flittering about the kitchen, preparing a large meal for the three of them. The curried rice will be great as a light lunch for them, not heavy on carbs, plenty of fat and protein for energy, so they won't feel bloated during the class which Izuku had managed to weasel out of Yagi-sensei. That was the class he would be teaching. So, he didn't want to weigh them down with something that would leave them feeling awful later. The smell of his food, however, was permeating itself through the building's ventilation, and when he set some pots to simmer, He came back to find that more than just the two girls had come wanting a meal. This gave him a chance to look over some of the others in the dorm. The round-haired girl had joined them, Yururika-san, since he remembered her from class. In fact, a few of the face he recognized. Sato, Shoji, Jiro, Hagakure, Kirishima, Kaminari, Tokoyami. Then there were some others he didn't recognize, so they must have been from the 1B course, whose names he wasn't aware of yet. So, what's going on and what is that amazing smell? Yururika asked. Well, Midoriya-kun has graciously offered to make us lunch, Yaoyorozu answered. This caused some of the students to be confused. Others got jealous. At this point, Kendo decided to interject. Because if you forgot, Aizawa-sensei said that only breakfast and lunch are provided by the school. Dinner is our responsibility, and some of us are on diets or just don't want to eat frozen meals all the time. So Midoriya-kun wants to make sure not just his hero skills are kept sharp, but that he can also be a more independent person since we have all somewhat moved out. At this, Izuku began blushing and stammering once all eyes were on him. Some out of the realization that they would need to cook for themselves, or that Izuku was already wooing two girls with his skills. That's wonderful, cheered Hagakure. An excellent use of time and resources to recognize the responsibilities one would undertake being in this new environment, nodded Tokoyami. A few grunts and grumbles as some people realized they had to take on added responsibilities and wondered if that was one of the reasons some of their parents agreed to them being housed in the dorm. So, on that, I don't think they're going to have staff cleaning the dorms either, so I wouldn't put it past the school to leave it up to us to keep the building clean. Momo capped off the explanation for the class. So, a way to distribute chores will need to be devised so that this place doesn't become a pigsty. This got groans from pretty much everyone, aside from those who were used to handling household chores or didn't consider it a punishment to keep a tidy home. Anyway, Kendo-chan, Yaoyorozu-chan, the curry will be done soon, so I hope you enjoy it. Izuku choosing to block out the stares he was getting from some others. He didn't want to try to dissect what those looks could mean. Thanks, Midoriya-kun. A reply in stereo came his way. Flushing his face again, he retreated to the kitchen to protect whatever shred of dignity he might still have. It wasn't good that both of the girls seemed able to get under his skin like that, less so they could do it in front of everyone without a second of hesitation. Most of the boys had already left to go to the cafeteria. The girls and some of the boys decided to stay behind and chat with each other. While Izuku was in the kitchen outside the earshot of the group, the conversation shifted to him very quickly. So, you three, what's up with that? Asked Jiro. Whatever do you mean? Kendo asked innocently. Tokoyami answered, well, when I first saw you, Midoriya-san, did an expert job at calming your nerves, and the way he held your hand, Yaoyorozu-san, during that horrific video yesterday, it seems you three have something going on. Yeah, came a voice from a short blonde girl with bull horns. It seems like he is your boy toy. At this, both Itsuka and Momo turned bright red. It's not like that. We're waiting. Spat out Momo, unaware that meant different things to everyone else. As the door opened to the kitchen, Izuku came out expertly carrying the plates of food on his arm. For the lovely ladies. Placing them down in one fluid motion. Glancing that people were still there, he blushed, having an audience for his flirting. No, don't mind us, as Kirishima, Shoji and Jiro started pushing people out of the dining room. Oh, come on, it was just getting good. Yururika whined. Yeah, at least wait until they starting the fun. From a green-haired girl. Nope, this is definitely not something we were invited to. A short, sky-blue-haired boy added. The group disbanding. At least they could have some juicy gossip for the rest of the classes. As the interruption, it didn't occur to the two girls to correct Momo's statement to the others. So, they quietly ate the food, which they both felt it was the best curry they have ever had, without paying for. Conversation shifted to learning about each other's home life. And since my parents are wealthy, it took a lot of convincing to get them to let me attend the dorms. They didn't mind having a limousine for me every day, but I told them it would be good to get better at social interactions with my classmates, and that it would look bad if it was known that I had them wasting gasoline to drive me to and fro every day. Momo finished her story, leaving them both flabbergasted. Not only was she beautiful and smart, but she was the heiress to one of the largest companies in Japan, a giant corporation that supplied most of the support equipment that heroes used in the region. So, What, you want to be a hero instead of joining the support course, if you don't mind me asking? Kendo asked. Not at all. It seems obvious that someone with a quirk like mine would join the support course, since I can make just about anything as long as I know what it's made of, but… She trailed off. I just want to be more than that. Everyone kept saying how good my quirk would be for the company, and that made me feel like my future was decided for me, that I didn't have a choice in who I would get to be. So, I feel a little self-conscious about my decisions, if it's the right path for me, so I hope the hero course can help me with that. Izuku, ever aware when someone needed emotional support, gripped Momo's hand in his. It's okay. That's a wonderful goal, Yaoyorozu-chan. Most people don't know what they want to do in life. At least you are smart enough to admit it. That's courage. I learned from someone that the successful people are those that can admit their faults and work to better themselves. He gave her a gentle squeeze and equally gentle smile. So no matter what you choose, I'll be there to help and support you as much as you need, so you can be the best hero you want to be. Same for you, Kendo-chan. His desire to help others, even through words, was enough to bring Momo to tears. Thank you, Midoriya-kun. It really makes me feel good that I have this much support for my decision. Wiping away the tears. So now I'm even more interested in your story. What makes Midoriya-kun the sweet and caring man he is? Well, it's not that impressive, at least compared to you two. Rubbing the back of his neck. Well, my quirk didn't develop until I was 12, so I got picked on a lot in school. This information shocked them both. Quirks developing late wasn't unheard of, but 12 was so far on the extreme that he may have set a record for a natural development. Some people's quirks came later, but they always had them and knew it. Just the trigger for them didn't come until later. Surely the teachers put a stop to it, Kendo interjected. Momo nodded. Both had attended very different schools, but both also had strict anti-bullying policies. Well, not really. Since everyone thought I was quirkless, they kind of didn't care what I did half the time or what others did to me. So a few other students of different grades would practice their quirks on me at times. What? Momo shrieked. How could the teachers just let that happen? It's against the law to use quirks without a license, let alone on another person. Frankly, the fact they would choose the easiest target is the most horrendous part of it. Yeah, that's no better than villains, Kendo added, her hands turning giant in her frustration. I mean, how can people think it's okay and for teacher to just ignore it? That's disgusting. Hope I never meet any of those people. Or they better hope they don't meet me, she said, punching her hand. Well, Izuku droned out, there is one here at the school. What? Both girls freaked out even further. How could someone like that get into this school? You would think it would screen them out for bad behavior from their middle school records. Momo stated. Well, again he began. Since the teachers never felt it needed to report unless it was more dangerous than they could cover up with a few bandages, which was just usually put down as roughhousing or something else, so they didn't have any government types breathing down their necks. Izuku's eardrums were beginning to hurt as the two girls began shouting about the legality of the situation or various threats to faceless people if they ever met. They alternated the comments, so it was at least refreshing to hear some colorful language. But Kachin really calmed down over the years. I mean, even though he beat and burned me, leaving me in garbage, I did get my quirk that day. The girls had ceased being able to verbalize their frustration. Especially after that sludge villain, I think we went back to rivals, instead of him being my bully anymore. Wait, sludge villain? Kendo asked. The realization shone on Yaoyorozu's face, instantly. Bakugo-san, was your bully? Momo stated. Kendo looked for answer, then it dawned on her, he's in the hero course too. Izuku nodded to them both. We should report this to the teachers immediately. And oh, Izuku's sudden shout stopping both girls who had risen from their seats. Sorry, I mean, Kachin does want to be a hero. It's just he always got told he was the greatest because he has a strong quirk, so he dreams to be the #1 hero, and thinks others have to be stepping stones on his way to get there. I don't want him kicked out of the school, because he might actually learn a few things, and I think a few people here have quirks that are just as strong, so he might mellow out a little once he realizes he isn't top dog anymore. He ranted out. So please, unless he goes back to bullying people again, don't report him. It might be the only way for him to be less mean. If not, do it for me. Please, he begged them. Taking in his reasoning, it made sense to both of the girls, who sat back down. Fine, but we are keeping an eye on him. So tell us more. you say you got your quirk then? Yeah, when I started it was kind of like my mom's. He reminisced the early days of practicing his magic. She was so excited that I finally got one. I studied really hard to get good with it, so I can do all those different tricks with it. Spent years practicing? He chuckled. Like that one time I nearly drowned. Please tell me you're joking. I don't think either of us could take much more. Momo pleaded. Not joking, but I wasn't in a lot of danger. I just tied myself up and threw myself into the ocean with a microwave strapped to my feet, so I have to escape out of that. Got grounded for a week after that incident. I swear if we didn't see a video of you rushing at a villain who held your childhood bully hostage with no regard just because you want to be a hero, I wouldn't believe someone could have that much disregard for their own safety. But you Midoriya-kun, you were something else. Kendo wheezed out. Well, it's not much to be honest. After that I just practiced, trained and helped my mom around the house. Izuku finished his story. I see you both finished your food. I'll go clean up. I think we got about an hour until class starts, so let's make sure we get ready. I hear it's a big surprise event. Both girls agreed. It was best to get away before they heard more of how bad Izuku was treated before they decided to lock him in a bubble and kill anyone who gets too close to their cute little hero. As they headed to their rooms, so I know we said we would wait, but I've never had anyone be so genuinely concerned for my well-being as him. Even my parents didn't pay much attention. They had maids for that. And from someone who got dealt such a bad hand, to still be such a kind and caring person. I don't think I want to wait. I know what I feel. Do you think it's bad of me to want to rush this? Momo asked Itsuka. No, and I hope he meant it when he said he wanted us both. I don't think I can compare to you. Smart, strong quirk, beautiful, and to top it off, rich as hell. Otherwise, I won't get in your way, Yaoyorozu-chan. Kendo quietly said. Thank you. And I absolutely believe what he said. He isn't going to see it like that. We are two amazing bombshells, and that boy needs some serious TLC. I wanted to ask why he never talked about his father, or even mentioned it. But after hearing about how he grew up, I'm scared of the answer. Why? I hope it isn't something like his dad's abusive. No, I think from what he said and how he acts, if his dad even tried to hit his mom, he would do everything to protect her. But he thought he was quirkless until he was 12. I'm well researched on a lot of subjects, and quirkless people don't have it good. Something like 40% of quirkless people commit suicide. And even more are just abandoned into orphanages or just on the streets. I think maybe his father left. I don't want to bring it up in case I'm wrong, or worse, if I'm right I don't want to be the one to make him remember that. I get it now. That's really heavy stuff. For someone so good to go through all of that, it's not fair. He's such a good guy. I really want to support him now, and I kind of don't want to wait either. Kendo added. But could we at least wait until the start of next week, get settled in and see where we are at? It got real emotional, really quick, and I think we need a chance to mellow for a few days because of this. Yeah, I could do that. Makes sense. We just agreed yesterday to wait. Jumping off the bandwagon this soon would be bad if we can't control ourselves for even a week. Author's notes. What up? It's me again. Back at it again with a new chapter. First off, I'm a liar. I said in an earlier author's notes my Neta would be in the dorm, but I just wrote him out. I don't much care for the character, so he wouldn't serve much of a purpose in this story other than a background character, and I want to make more foreground, less background. So if someone was hoping for my Neta, I'm sorry, he's gone. Secondly, I'm also impatient. I know in Chapter 6 I said the girls agreed to wait. So I decided to throw emotional baggage onto people so they get put into emotional situations. This was done because I'm tired of most stories that everyone seemed to not even acknowledge the history that Izuku and Katsuki have. So now it's something that Kendo and Yaoyorozu are aware of early on, so they can understand what Bakugo is, and hopefully also see some of the changes he is making in himself. Next, Monoma. Oh, I like how much I'm making you guys hate him. He is going to cause so many problems so soon. So for the combat course, I have been mulling over so many decisions. Do I keep it 2v2? Do I change the goal? I know All Might has around 3 hours, so I still have to abide by that. So in the original with 5 groups of 4, each with around a half an hour for the groups to get ready and then set up for the next group, he was at around 2.5 hours for that class. If I double the students, that won't make sense since he would be over his limit. So I need to make sure that it incorporates more students, so I was thinking of some ideas. All Might in this is still not a skilled teacher, so he would want to go with more familiar territory, and since he can't just punch students into shape like he was, games, but you can use your quirks. Because I think him going straight into live fire exercises was a bit too soon for the students since they had just had one class prior to see how their quirks worked in basic physical exercises. So instead, I will have the students divided up and play some sports and games that I used to play as a kid. But I'm not sure which one. I think Capture the Flag/Flag Football would be the most simple and recognizable for many readers. I could try a giant game of hide and seek so it isn't really combat-oriented, but I might save that for the utility training. Right about that. Classes will be broken up a bit. Instead of just All Might teaching students how to fight each other, there will be more teachers for the hero course, and they will spend the time going over the 3 categories: combat, rescue, and utility. CRU for short, to make sure the students are well-rounded. So first class will be a combat class. So next would be a rescue, which will be basic life-saving techniques and such. Probably going to be short since until their provisional licensing test they didn't show any rescue training and the USJ was a clusterfuck. So I will try to at least provide a method of, yes, they do know what to do. I wrote a small chapter about them learning how to properly tend to injuries in the field. Utility will be more around how they can use their quirks in different non-combat manners. So since I am going to have the other courses in the background and providing assistance to the heroes as they help devise new gear for them to use. Izuku will maintain the role of helping everyone figure out uses for his quirk. I don't want him to have the mechanical knowledge to rival support course in what people need, but quirk usage is where he will shine. So back to exercises. Maybe an asymmetrical battle with the students who scored the highest on the combat facing on their own against the other students who either didn't perform as well or took the other exams. So either Capture the Flag or the asymmetrical battle. Next, I have ideas. So I may start the Omake story. Can you even call it that when it's more like Drabbles? So I will try and put ideas that either don't warrant a chapter and would destroy the flow if I included it or have very little or anything to do with this story. We'll see how that turns out. Also, if I do those, they will be 100% rated M. Seriously, I have ideas not safe for work, school, or church. Finally, I haven't named everyone who is in the dorms. There are a few more, mostly the 1B. I am not sure. 50:50 on if I want Shinso in the dorm with them or not. Could go either way. For those who are questioning if there will be any homosexual romance, it's just more fun to write it like that. There will be some, but you have to look for it. I will drop hints about who like who. Midnight is down for just about anyone, except it's all talk. She has a great body and is confident in it. However, zero practical experience. Either she scares off the meeker guys or the others come on too strong or want nothing to do with her. So take that information with you. I have an idea for that as well. Not sure. We'll play that out and see. Lastly, I know I'm really bad like that. This chapter was a bit shorter than the previous 2 and didn't even cover a day. So, if you wanted more, there will be the second half of the day in the next chapter. Yes, Monomo will be an asshole. His karma is building. It feeds on your emotions. The more outrage, the more delicious it shall be when he falls. For those wondering, that was Pony Tsunatori. She is the foreign exchange student, and her understanding of the Japanese language is poor. Monomo will abuse that like he did. She also meant boyfriend, not boy toy, but she is still learning and will occasionally cause problems. Endeavor is a dick. We'll get to that. Can that be my catchphrase? Brutal reviews. Hope y'all loving this. Chapter 8, Imogen Heap. As the clock approached the time needed for the students to attend test site Gamma, an announcement on the intercom came across the campus. First-year hero department, please report to your homeroom to acquire your hero outfits, then proceed to test site Gamma. Before the line cut out, you could hear a bit of a groan in the background. I guess someone forgot to inform us to get out stuff first. Momo posited, as Itsuka, Izuku, and herself changed course to head to the classroom. Oh, I can't wait to see what they did for our costumes, Kendo said as she bounced along the path, barely able to contain her excitement to see her ideas take form into a kick-ass costume. Sharply intaking breath, your tuxedo? She asked, though it came out more like a statement. Yes, Kendo-chan? Izuku responded. I asked them to improve on it somewhat. Not too big a change from last time. Oh, Momo-chan, you have to see it. Itsuka grabbed her hands. He looks so cute in it. Izuku stumbled as he walked. It's not that cute, he muttered in response. "Oh, Izuku, if you are this cute now," Momo fished a response. His blush meant he took the bait. A suit is going to be too much. By now both girls were laughing at the gentle ribbing they were giving him. "Since when am I Izuku?" he quietly asked. He didn't really care about the answer. He just needed them to switch subjects. "When I thought it would be cute," Momo stated matter-of-factly. Itsuka started nodding along with her. "Yeah, it is cute." "Itsuku-kun." As she stuck her face close to Izuku's and a gentle blow lifted his hair off his forehead. The only thing he could do was to hide his face behind his hands to protect his dignity from these two she-devils who existed solely to torture his gently sensibilities. He quickly paced his way into the 1A classroom, hoping to get away from the girls. He realized that won't work when one of them is in his class, as Momo just followed him inside. A soft grumble at his poor planning left her with a giggle. "Can't get away from us that easily. At least not me." She chuckled to him. "But we need to get serious, so you can see how we look in our costumes at the test site. I think you're going to like it." As she gave a pronounced bend to pick up her case from the floor and a soft sachet as she exited the classroom. In Izuku's infinite self-awareness to social interactions, he once again missed the glares he was getting from some of the guys in the classroom who had arrived to retrieve their costume. He took his case and walked into the men's locker room. As he began stripping out of his clothes, a few people rounded on him. "Dude, you got a spill. How did you get not one but two hotties already? It's literally been a day," asked a boy with a lightning bolt in his hair. "Yeah, it's totally manly," chirped a red-haired boy. "I too would like to know how you were able to form these meaningful relations so quickly," asked Fumikage. As Izuku realized he wasn't in any danger, he proceeded to return to changing into his clothes, unaware there was a hole near his locker. "Sure, they're talking to Izuku," Jiro stated, her earplugs stuck in the wall, as the rest of the girls crowded around her. If there was one thing teenage girl like most, it's gossip, and hearing about the mysterious student who was the top student was definitely juicy. "Jiro-san," Kendo started. "We should get ready. It's not polite to eavesdrop on the boys," the green-haired girl from the dorms added. "But Kendo-san, don't you and Yayarozu-san want to know if he was doing anything untoward to gain your affection? I would be shocked to learn if a fellow hero in training would do anything untoward a maiden's honor." For some reason, a light above her intensified to make it bathe her in a soft glow. After an awkward grin, the girls turned back to Jiro, who shushed them. "They're talking again. Look, I didn't do anything. I just introduced myself and started trying to be their friends." Izuku began. The boys crept closer. "It's not hard. Both Itsuka-chan and Momo-chan are wonderful to talk to, both so driven and intelligent." In the girls' locker room, both the subjects of his praise were blushing. A few girls were awing at how cute and earnest he was. "I didn't do anything I wouldn't do to any other girl. You show them you care about them, not their bodies. That you listen to and value their opinions and ideas. Just treat them like people and don't expect them to return your affection. You could just not be their type." Izuku continued as he unpacked his costume. "At least that's what my mom taught me." Back with the girls, "That's so?" Hagakure and Ishido swooned, until they were interrupted from a shout on the other side of the walls. "Bullshit." All the guys in the room stopped, not expecting a sudden outburst. A few heads poked into the aisle that Izuku was in. "I saw those two come out of your room this morning," a blonde head proceeded to approach them. "Not too hard to get the attention of girls who would just go into a boy's room they just met. What kind of girl does that tell you they are?" In the other locker room, most of the girls were fuming. Who the hell was this guy was the only question on their mind. "Dude, not manly," stated Kirishima. "Yeah, 'cause it's so womanly to just enter a strange boys' dorm on the first day," he replied sarcastically. "I heard a lot of noise coming from your room after they got in there. Couldn't even wait until the night to make moves." "I didn't, we did," Izuku stammered. See, he can't even try to deny it properly. As the boy laughed, he had a few scowls from some of the boys, but they were unsure what to do in this situation. "And what was that about your mom teaching you?" Izuku shrank into himself at the comment. He hadn't dealt with verbal bullying in a long time. Kachin only used goading remarks to express his anger when he would train with Izuku. Not having to dodge a punch or kick was different. He didn't know how to fight back against this. "Leave," My imam out of this, he whined. Oh, leave your mom alone. You a mama's boy. He didn't so much as ask as made it an insult. A soft growling came from the other side of the locker room. The blue-haired boy from earlier approached. This is behavior unbecoming of a UA student. Cease immediately. We are going to run late and should not keep our fellow students and faculty waiting on us. A soft chuckle as the boy walked away, getting in one last comment. Maybe he just flashed those abs of his. A few of the easier girls might be impressed by those. As he exited the locker room, Izuku began sniffing and trying to hide his face. Dude, that was so unmanly, Kirishima started. I've only seen you like twice, and even I can tell you aren't like that, and I don't think Kendo-san or Yaoyorozu-san are like that either. I'm sorry I didn't do more to make him stop. It's okay. I should have stood up to him. It wasn't right for him to insult Momo-chan or Itsuka-chan. I'm sorry for being too much of a coward to make him stop. Izuku wiped his face. Thankfully, he didn't start crying, but his face being as flushed as it was, he felt like he was boiling. It's okay, Midoriya-san, Fumikage added. Since he wasn't getting physical, there wasn't much we could to force him to stop. At this comment, a purple-haired boy lowered his head. We should endeavor to make sure the attitudes of our classmates are heroic as are our own. Missing a flinch from another boy at the use of a certain word. I wholeheartedly agree, concluded Ida. It's important that we have the mindset of heroes if we want to be heroes. So, we should make sure that people like him are properly instructed on how to improve, because punishment without a plan to grow will only stunt someone's growth. A few more comments of agreement from the locker room as the boys headed out. Back in the girls' locker room, a few murmurs about what transpired. Wow, that guy was a jerk. Too bad we didn't get a name. And Jiro is the only one who heard him clearly. Was he someone from your class? Asked a gray-haired girl with baggy eyes. Shaking her head, no, it didn't sound like anyone in our class. We have one kid who yells a lot, but he's always yelling. This guy wasn't doing much of that. Oh, gross, he's in our class. Complained a girl with black hair and soft features. Whoever this is, we don't want to associate it with him. Some of those other guys seem okay. Finished Ururika. But it seems right. We should finish up and go meet the others. Don't want to be late. Ajui concluded. As the students met at Site Gamma, they took in some of the other costumes people were wearing. For most it was simple body armor or a few belts and nothing major. They weren't sure what would be needed, or some more of the extreme items needed time to finish being made, so most weren't that much more than the standard gym uniform. However, Izuku didn't focus on that. He was too enraptured by two beautiful young women, one in a blue cheapao with a black corset and the other in a red leotard vest with a gold utility belt, both revealing a fair amount of skin to the looker, leaving little to the imagination. Izuku felt very overdressed in his three-piece midnight black tuxedo. It fit his form excellently and captured his frame in such a manner that you could tell he exercised regularly and was very fit. Itsudash, that's... As he stuttered and flustered up a compliment. Both girls got the point and proceeded to laugh. Oh, see, Momo-chan. I told you he looked cute. Kendo jeered. I understand what you mean, Itsuka-chan, Yaoyorozu jested. He does look really cute in his suit. And that cape, every hero needs a cape. Izuku just made himself smaller, which elicited more chuckles from his teasers. However, before he could think of a retort, a booming voice rang out. Haha, we are here. Everyone turned to look at the approaching sound. For teachers were approaching, however, one stood above them all. All Might, the #1 hero. Along with him were the two homeroom teachers, Eraserhead and Vlad King, with the fourth being Midnight. The chatter from the students and questions being thrown out were too much for a proper response. Now, children. All Might began. A quick jab from Eraserhead into his ribs, however, caught his attention. There's no need to shout. It's too early. For everyone else, 2 in the afternoon would be right about the perfect time to shout if you asked the opinion of children or All Might. But Eraserhead was a nighttime hero. He did his best work in the dark. Understanding that even being awake is throwing off his sleep schedule, he started over, but with less vigor, but no less enthusiasm. Now, children, I cannot answer all your questions. Partly because I couldn't understand when you all start like that, but mostly because it's more important to tell you what we are doing here today, as All Might commanded the space around him. The original plan was for you all to engage in 2-on-2 combat, to accurately test how your quirks worked on another human. However, I have been informed that letting you all beat the crap out of each other is not an appropriate training. He started putting cue cards into his back pocket. Midnight sniggering in the background. Bunch of softy crybabies must have made that rule, he grumbled, remembering how he was trained to use his quirk. So instead, I will train you in a different manner, a more child-friendly manner. With games, kids love games, so we will be playing a game of capture the flag. He posed heroically as if that was sufficient information. When he realized that his speech did not elicit the correct amount of cheer from his young audience, Vlad King decided to step in. What all muscles here means is that most of you grew up playing games and sports, but not allowed to use any of your natural ability, in the spirit of keeping things fair. That, however, as we all know, is total bullcrap. So, you will be broken up into 8 teams of 5, at random. Then each of us will take 2 teams to an area in test site Gamma, at which you will hide the flag, defend your own, and take the opposing team's flag, or attempt to do so. At this point, Midnight stepped up. Now this is an important lesson too. Can anyone highlight reasons why we are doing this activity in this manner? Winking at the students. Many of the crowd started shouting out answers. Before she could try to subdue the crowd, however, a yell rang out. Listen up, brats. As a scarf was floating around the head of the 1A homeroom teacher. If you cannot learn to behave, you will be punished severely. So quietly raise your hands, not your voice. Do I make myself clear? Red glowing eyes stared down all the students, making them flinch under his gaze. Yes, sir. Came unanimously. Thank you, Izuku, crooned Midnight. Now, eeny meeny miny mo, I choose you. She points to a purple head of hair. Introduce yourself and then explain why you think there is a lesson to be learned in these games. A deliberate sigh came from the boy as he shuffled his way forward. I am Hitoshi Shinso. I guess because we don't get to pick who or where we are fighting. Almost got the whole thing in one try. She winked to him. Completely unfazed, he returned to his spot in the back of the pack. Now why don't you try to get the rest? Pointing her whip at Todoroki. I am Todoroki Shoto, because we don't get to pick with whom we work. Giving the least amount of participation required, he sulked his head as Midnight let out a giggle. Oh, so close to getting it all, and in so few people. Spotting a familiar head of hair, she sauntered over to our young magician and raised his chin so he looked into her eyes. How about you, a wonder child? Can you tell little Ulmi what the last point is? Sporting a pout and puppy dog eyes. Well, I would have to say, it's important to be able to recognize what quirks are available to you, against you, and prioritize methods to both attack and defend an objective so that we are capable of being used in a more diverse manner than we would previously expect. Since most of us grew up with our quirks, it would be very easy to become close-minded about what your own quirk can do, and a new perspective is required to develop your abilities into. As Izuku rambled, this was clearly a more in-depth answer than was expected of any of the students. A quick push to his shoulder from Bakugo snapped him out of his trance. Nerd, shut up. Katsuki growled. Sorry, Kachin. Izuku responded. Ahem. Well, that was certainly well thought out and completely correct. Good job, Wonder Child. As she winked to him and walked back to the other teachers, Izuku flushed at her tease. Most of the time, unless you work on a hero team, you will be paired up with whomever is in the area. For many small regions, that's going to be whoever is in the same agency as you, but for large cities like the ones many of you are familiar with, it's going to be whoever gets there first. And since a certain Wonder Child caught the attention of the principal, we want to make sure you all don't fall into a single wheelhouse. You'll need to adapt to who is with you more than who is against you. If you can't see how to utilize the quirks of those around you, you might overlook a way to win. She turned it back to All Might to finish the job. Now it's important that you know the rules. It's a game, so don't get as serious. Putting yourself in danger is part of the job of a hero. Being reckless, however, can hurt those around you when you don't want to. So be mindful of how hard you are going. If you get too rough, we will penalize your whole team. So we hope that alone will be enough to dissuade anyone from being more destructive than necessary. All Might stopping his gaze on a few people. Next, you will have 5 minutes to hide your flag. The flag itself must be visible, so you can't just bury it in the dirt somewhere. All Might gets a few chuckles from the students. If you get captured by this, as he pulls out bright yellow safety tape, You are out, however. You want to think of that. It's a measure to help you understand, in a nice way, a harsh reality. Some of you won't make it, be it an accident or deliberate measure. Bad things happen. The good guy doesn't always go home. The change from his light and jovial language to a somber tone was sudden and gradual at the same time. Everyone understood that weight of those words. This wasn't a game they were playing. It was preparation for the real world. When they go out to stop villains, and as they glanced around, some realized the people standing around them might not be alive in a few years. "Dude, that's a bummer," said Kirishima. "Yes, it is a very sobering thought, young Kirishima," All Might responded, his voice picking up in fervor. "But that is why this is a game at a school, with teachers. It's just as important to lose as it is to win. If you get captured, I want you to seriously reflect on what led you to get caught, what possible mistakes you might have made, before you think about how the actions of others led you to this situation. Your safety is our priority, but it ultimately rests on your own shoulders. Now lastly, because I'm sure you all want to get started," noticing the eagerness in the eyes of his pupils, "you will have 30-minute matches, where 2 groups will enter, and then the remaining groups will sit with us and we will watch, after which we will discuss what happened together." This got nods of approval from the students as they understood how important it was to learn about the different abilities they would possess. The 2 homeroom teachers approached and took out slips of paper. Written on those were the names of the students. "We are going to draw out the names of the students. This will give you your teams. After that, we will divide you onto which teams would face each other. Now, All Might, where's the hat?" As he noticed his co-worker's empty hands, All Might blanched, muttering something about forgetting it in the teacher's lounge. Not wanting to waste any more time, and to get some of the awkward attention off of his hero, Izuku reached out his own. "Here, you can just use mine. It's plenty big." As Vlad King reached for the object, a quick blur got to it first. "Why, thank you, Wonder Child. So sweet and helpful." As Midnight twirled it on her finger, the other teachers had a very exasperated look on their faces at her antics. Eraserhead decided to ignore her shenanigans and instead chose to remain professional. "Let's begin drawing names." After about 5 minutes, the names were drawn. Izuku tried to figure out who all was on what teams, but everyone was pushed around and grouping up and strategizing. He instead decided to get his head into the game. He wanted to win. "So, Mr. Top of the class, how do we win this?" Kirishima approached him. Izuku took stock of his team. He noticed that he had Kirishima, Koda, and 2 girls from the 1B course. "Well, first let's go over our quirks. What can we do?" Izuku putting the main issue on the table. Kirishima wasting no time. "I got a hardening quirk," as he transformed his arms into rock and smacked them together. The loud noise made Koda shrink back. "I am Trauma," said the blonde transfer student. "I am Pony. It's too weird for people to call me by my last name." "I think you mean zebra, not Trauma. Also, it's more like a bull than any equine," said the particularly short girl. "I'm Yui Kodai. I have a size quirk, not as strong as MT Lady, but I can double or have my size." Turning to the last person who had not introduced themselves, Koda held up a signboard. "I'm Koda, and I can talk to animals." Understanding that it is his turn, "My name is Izuku Midoriya. I'm a magician." Kirishima letting out a chuckle that Izuku stood by that introduction. As the team made its way to get its flag, he noticed who the opposing team would be. Bakugo, Yururika, Aoyama, and 2 people who must have been from the 1B course. At this point, they were given 5 minutes to enter from the opposite side of the arena, to hide their flag. It wasn't a large area, maybe a few hundred meters in any direction. Would take more than 30 minutes to scour the entire field on your own. With a team, it was doable. So I know Kachin's quirk, Explosion, almost as good as he does. He'll also just want to go straight to a fight. Yururika-san can make objects float. Aoyama-san can shoot a laser. What about the other 2? A girl with vines for hair, and a boy with a skull face. Izuku asked the 2 people from the other course. "Well, Shiozaki-san can control her hair. It's pretty strong." She trailed off, Pony taking over. "Hananuki-kun. He can make anything flaccid." The rest of the group suddenly turned as red as Kirishima's hair. Kodai knew she had to clear this up quickly. "Soft. She means soft. Sweetie," turning to Pony, "we need to work on synonyms with you." Turning back to the others, His quirk can soften the ground into quicksand. To be honest, I'm not feeling too hot. None of our quirks are made for combat, and pretty much all of theirs are. Literally shrinking smaller at the perceived crushing defeat. Ah man, she's right. Kirishima dropped his hands in exasperation. Doesn't matter that we got the one person to beat a teacher, we can't do anything to win against that if we can't attack anything. As the feelings of his teammates continued to drop, they were turned out of it by a disturbing sound. Turning, they realized for the last minute Izuku was doing nothing but muttering. Koda was the one to place a hand on Midoriya's shoulder, getting his attention. Do you have a plan? Read out his chalkboard. Yeah, I actually do. Crazy as it sounds, we have more offensive capability than they do. Izuku letting a devious smile come to play on his face. Who wants to win this? A joyous cheer rang out as the team huddled up to Izuku. They knew he would lead them to victory. After the 5 minutes had finished, a harsh bell rang out, signaling the start of the event. Last chance, man. You sure about this? Kirishima asked as he finished hammering the flag into the ceiling. Absolutely. I know Kachin. He's going to force a fight. The others won't want to just attack us. They don't seem bloodthirsty enough. We'll capitalize on them wanting to avoid conflict. Izuku chuckled, using his kerchief to tie it around the room, disguising the flag among a few hundred different pieces of cloth. Not to doubt, since you are really the only person with actual experience. But how do we beat them, since none of our quirks are destructive? At Izuku's laugh, the others look at him. It's why we'll win. If you think they are destructive, so will they. Izuku finished tying off the kerchiefs. Because they might actually believe Kachin's gung-ho attitude and try a frontal assault. He's pretty convincing that way, so we'll use that to our advantage. As Izuku then began pulling rabbits out of his hat, "Here, Koda-san, you'll need these," as he handed over a half-dozen rabbits, then shifting his cape to release a flock of doves. As Koda then used his quirk to gain control of the various animals. Everyone else stared at him wide-eyed. All right, everyone. As Izuku walked towards the door leading outside of the building they chose as base, it's showtime. Kicking open the door and stepping out, Izuku instinctively ducked under Katsuki's right hook, grabbing him by the wrist and throwing him further down the road. So Kachin, come here often. Smirking as he sees Bakugo pick himself up off the floor. Oh, you shitty nerd. I'm going to get you for that. He growled out as the rest of Izuku's team exited the building. Actually, dude, you're gonna have to get me for that. As Kirishima tackled him back into the ground, the rest of Izuku's team ran off together, quickly scanning the buildings for possible signs to where they put the flag. Knowing how fast Kachin got here, it had only been a minute, Izuku mutters out, his team shouldn't be too far from us. Izuku began scanning the buildings. The crescendo of explosions as they left Kirishima to deal with Bakugo resonated in the background. Does anyone see anything that would indicate where they might be stationed at? Koda grabbed Izuku before he stepped of the alley they were running in. Pointing up to the birds, he wrote on his board. The birds see them in the building on our left. Erasing the board to write more, rabbits say that Hananuki-san and Shiozaki-san are on the ground floor. That makes sense. Their quirks work best when they don't have to worry about causing structural damage to their base. Izuku stopped outside the door. That's a good strategy, Koda-san, using the animal senses to gather information. Koda blushed at the compliments. So we have two targets whose main abilities are suppression. He turned to face the door. Okay, when I burst in, you three get up the stairs and find that flag, then get it to Pony. She's the fastest, and to get it out of the arena, that's how we win. Midoriya-san, Kodai quietly interrupted. But how will the three of us get past them with only you fighting? I'm glad you asked. For my next trick, I need you to shrink down and put on my hat. He placed the hat on her head. As she shrunk down, the hat engulfed her and fell to the floor with a faint plop. Here, Pony, you will need to get this as close to their flag as possible. Wide-eyed Pony took the hat with shaking hands. Looking inside, he could not see Kodai-san. So now, only two of you have to get past them, which is easy since the source of a magician's power is their ability to distract. He squared up to the door. On my signal, run for the stairs. Kicking in the door, a burst of brightly colored smoke filled the frame. A shadow standing in the doorway, and if you were quick enough, you could see two other shadows rush past and out of sight. Step right up, boys and girls. Be amazed as Izuku Midoriya, the world's greatest magician, performs feats of wonder, sights to dazzle and tricks to confound and befuddle the mind. As Izuku strode into the room, hands held high, both his targets too caught off guard by the sudden and quite flashy entrance of their opponent. So, his gigantic smile quickly shifted into a predatory grin. Who wants to volunteer? Back with Kirishima, under the unrelenting onslaught by Bakugo, he was left with his own thoughts. Dude, this guy is no joke. I can't even throw a punch under this barrage. It's insane he can put out this much power. So, he managed to choke out, trying not to inhale the smoke from the explosions glancing off his hardened body. I'm Kirishima, and you're Kachin, right? Don't call me that shitty hair. He barked out a retort. But Midoriya-san calls you that. He laughed. It's so cute, compared to how you act. This only caused Bakugo to increase the intensity of his blasts. Would think he was talking about a little girl. Come on, take the bait. If I can get him to slip up, I can counter and go on the offensive. The only response from Bakugo, however, was a growl and a large flash, stun grenade. Blinded Kirishima puts his guard up to protect from a frontal assault. However, Bakugo had another plan, using his quirk to propel himself over Kirishima. A quick blast to the back of his head as he completes the rotation sends the red-haired boy to the ground. A groan from Kirishima as he tries to get up. Bakugo, instead of putting him out of his misery, places the capture tape on him. Dude, Kirishima wheezes out. That was super manly, hearing only a response of "you too," as Bakugo ran back to the building they put their flag in. Despite having two quirks designed for suppression, neither Hananuki-san nor Shiozaki-san were able to pin him down. At first, when they regained their senses, she grabbed him in her vines, but for some reason he had been able to simply fall out of them. Hananuki wasn't faring much better. He tried to get him to sink into the quicksand, but each time it seemed like Midoriya could walk on water. While those are some pretty impressive quirks, Izuku complimented his foes. And you two have such good control over them, it's such a shame you didn't think to work as a team. Brain, do not give advice to the enemy team while you are fighting them. Wait until later. As Izuku dodged another set of vines. I mean, think about it. If you spread out your vines in his quicksand, you could make a very effective field of suppression, get grabbed by a vine and get dragged in, or get caught in the sand and be too slow to dodge the vines. As the two 1B students looked at him, as if he had grown a second head. Why are you telling us this? Asked Hananuki. As noble as it is to provide assistance to your classmates, said Shiozaki, even I would not consider doing so, while I was combating them. There would be no point in telling you after we win, as he flipped over a set of vines. Then you might feel bad about not thinking of it sooner. So I hope that doing so now might get you in the mindset of working together, he weaved in between the pools of softened earth. If I can help someone, I should, regardless of where or when it is. That's what being a hero is about. His declaration causing them to freeze. Taking advantage of their pause, he pushed Shiozaki-san into Honuk-san, causing them to fall onto each other. And maybe I feel like that still wouldn't be enough. Why am I antagonizing them? So why not give it a try and see what happens? The devilish grin on his face as he leans against a support beam. Despite his comments being cocky, both of his opponents got up and had a gleam in their eyes. They were ready to try harder and wanted to win. Don't get too big-headed. Arrogance is often mistaken as skill, Shiozaki said as she spread her vines around the room. Vine forest, dozens of vines broke through the floor, creating a sea of green that would whip and grab in almost random directions. Yeah, it's your funeral if you get sunk because of this. Hananuki placed his hands on the ground again. Concrete swamp, as the entire floor turns into a bog. Izuku began his act of dancing through the vines until one managed to grab him at the point and pulled his foot down into the ground, and the rest of the vines converged on his location. As he had been buried up to his shoulders, he could only begin laughing. Excellent work, you two. I knew you could do it. His praise confusing them. At this time, though, the rest of my team should be making their escape. his comment causing the two of them to realize they had spent a good few minutes just distracted by him as they rushed upstairs, leaving him in the floor. Up above them were nothing but screams. Uraraka couldn't focus on floating herself too well with the doves constantly pecking at her and dive-bombing the young lady. Aoyama kept trying to shoot his beam at Koda and Pony, but the rabbits kept jumping at him and he didn't want to blast any of them with his laser. As Pony ducked and weaved her way through the room towards the flag, she realized that the floor was too clear of debris and looked up just as Uraraka dropped everything on top of her. Caught under the weight of the objects, she quickly tossed the hat so that it landed next to the flag. It lied still. Once Hananuki and Shiozaki got upstairs, it was quick work for them to catch Koda. So we got them all? Uraraka cheered. Pony and Koda had capture tape placed on them. They fell under our combined might. As the team cheers were suddenly cut out by a primal yell. Get back here, I'll kill you. However, that was nothing compared to the slow clapping that came from the pile of boxes. Well done. What a wonderful show. Everyone's eyes turned to see a green-haired boy wearing a tuxedo. He lifted his arm and poured some sand from his wrist. I must say, quicksand is nothing like that slime villain, however doesn't smell or taste nearly as bad. A series of explosions as Bakugo bounded up the stairs. Growling, Bakugo slowly trotted his way to Izuku. It's 5-on-1. Prepare to die. Izuku could only chuckle as he hopped off of the boxes and casually strolled up to Bakugo. Why should I when we are going to win in 3? Counting down on his fingers. 2. Eyes wide as they tried to figure out his bravado. 1. An alarm rang out. Over the intercom a voice cheered. Round over, Wonder Team wins. Midnight not caring to be impartial. Bakugo in turn grabbed Izuku by the collar. How? Is all he could snarl. Izuku calmly walked over and picked up his hat. Reaching into it, he pulled back and Kodia came along with it. Thank you, my lovely assistant. I could not have done a better performance without you. Or any one of you. As he gestured to the teams, placing a small kiss on the back of Kodai's hand. But how did you do that? Uraraka asked. I will explain everything when we get back to the rest of our classmates. Izuku, twirling his hat, strolled down the steps and out the door. Author's notes. I'm so sorry for how long it took to get this chapter out. It's not even that long. I just could not get it to how I felt I should have, and then with getting a new job, I got all caught up in that, and then just never sat back down to hammer out some details. Had a friend go over this chapter, and he brought up a few inconsistencies that I recognize, and he anticipated a few things I was working on. First, yes, I agree I have been progressing Izuku and his lady friend's relationship a bit too quickly. I felt natural to me, somewhat. But for that, I decided to smack Izuku with something he wasn't expecting and something he had never had to deal with before. Someone making fun of the people he cared about. Previously, he only had his mother, and that was pretty much off limits when people would bully him. So someone who attacked him at the angle is not something he is capable of being prepared for, so he is going to backpedal hard. Second, I am awful at writing combat. I try to get it to where my description is vivid enough for people to visualize it in their head. And that sometimes gets me weird in that I'm unsure if some of the words I use are proper and can accurately describe what I see in my head. Third, I have taken into consideration that things seem to be, for a lack of a better term at the moment, non-threatening. That will change. I take the idea that harsh reality has yet to sink in. That is going to change. I will kill some people off, and not just background characters either. Sure, some of them may die, but realistically no one really cares since they didn't matter. I expect to lose some readers after the bodies start piling up. Sorry for those who I kill a favorite of theirs. Fourth, I have set up a poll on my profile. As I start to get more comfortable writing, I can come to ideas about other properties to write with. I cannot see how the poll looks on my profile for some reason, so if it's a mess, hopefully I can figure that out. Fifth, the I plead. I am dropping some pretty strong hints about people's psychology in this chapter, and that the teachers are a bit more perceptive than in canon. There will be efforts to try and bring them out before it erupts into further problems. Using the 1B students was actually really fun. The only problem is that I had to use the ones whose quirks were shown even a little bit, which was annoying since they don't give a lot of information. So working with them was a bit different. I have been keeping up with the manga, so I may snatch some of those people from future chapters to use, so I can have a nice diverse cast instead of the same ones always. Next chapter will explain how Izuku won. Not hard to figure out really, then more dorm stuff, hopefully rescue class. I don't think I will describe the other team's combat. It's a bit unnecessary and would be super time-consuming, and wouldn't really do much but get people to be like, oh wow, so-and-so is so strong. And we already know who the powerhouses are. So I felt that it would be redundant and only treat my readers as if they don't know the cast to do that. Now to respond to reviews directly, something I have not done yet beyond some PMs. To Ranger McAleer, you were correct. To everyone, that was Sophie from Howl's Moving Castle. The point of the shop, outside of setting the main plot difference, was to throw a few famous anime items as a nod to fans. Seemed obvious. She will make a return. Inko will be at the sports festival. So will a lot of parents. Didn't seem right that only Indicvor showed up. With how much they talk this up as being bigger than the Olympics, it would make sense that many stores would be closed and families of the students would be able to have the time off to go, or at the very least watch the event. So Mama Midoriya will be there. Maybe draped around her new boyfriend. We'll see. Need to write date night. To Wild Trance, Todoroki will be shown love. Not sure how, but he will get some of his own. Throwing Endeavor at Stain is too nice. I have something better I am working on. Some pissed off moms to start. To Xprajarly JX, I am usually not a fan of harem either. Some are really good and make sense, others are just MC gets everyone because they are MC. As for advice, I will definitely read your stuff and help if I can. At least it's for properties I know. Wouldn't be able to help if I know nothing about the characters going into it. But I'll give it a shot with DBZ. To ANC Wanted, I cannot say I won't turn Bakugo gay, but at this moment it's not something he's considered. However, I have hinted at someone liking him, but they are teenagers, their understanding is pretty limited at this moment. So if I can make it feel natural, he might decide to go with a guy or girl. It just hasn't come up yet. At the very least, he and some guys will have respect for each other. This is not confirming he will be paired with a guy either. He might not pair at all. I just need to see how characters interact with each other. To Random Dude, thanks for the advice. That's part of what this chapter was supposed to do. Draw back the romance to a more flirty level. Not ready to commit yet. I get that I pushed it a bit fast. And while it seems the KIM pairing, Kendo, Izuku, Momo, is working, if it becomes a hindrance, I might be able to switch it around to something more manageable. As for everyone, I feel like at least a lot of the girls will swoon, simply because he's smart, strong, funny, flirty, and kind. A pretty strong combination that pretty every girl, real or fictional, want. But that's not all a girl wants. That's a simple surface impression, and after getting to know him, their views of him will fall into other categories beyond romantic interest. As for Katsuki and Izuku being friends, they aren't really, more like rivals or frenemies. They don't exactly like each other, but know that while what they are not doing isn't healthy, it's very conducive to growing their powers. So I don't expect Christmas cards. They do train well with each other, and in a sense look out for one another. To Supershot, the prank war did not end when they went to UA. It has only been put on hold. Access to other quirks and teachers will lead to a very messy year. There are Vietnam flashbacks than there are UA flashbacks. To X the Candyman, I will work on adding more descriptions for the other senses other than sound and sight. We'll try to describe what someone would smell, feel, and taste when things get going. Should start with Katsuki. The smell of explosions is easy to imagine, so I can get better at that. Finally, brutal reviews. I have been bad, taking so long. Let me know. I can work harder now that I fell into a routine. Gonna have to finish some drabbles. Chapter 9, Date Night Part 1. Is he here yet, sweetie? Came a shout from down the hall. Not yet, Mom. I'll let you know when to come out, was the shouted reply. Izuku knew this day would come. He had tried to prepare for it for years, but it's never the same when it's a reality. He had to seriously step up his game. This was one of the most important nights of his life. A rapping on the door broke him out of his thoughts. Coming as he got up, moving quickly to the door, he knew what to expect, who to expect. He knew their every strength and weakness, how he would need to act and react to this confrontation. Opening it, he saw his target, standing off to the side, motioning, "Please come in. She'll be right out." "Let's wait in the living room, sensei." Tugging at his collar, a bead of sweat formed on his forehead. "Is that really necessary, young Midoriya? I could just..." He started before being cut off. Wait in the living room. What an excellent idea. Let me take your coat. Don't want you to sweat too much. He pulled his teacher, his idol, into his apartment. Any other time, he would be ecstatic, but not tonight. Tonight he was the enemy. He had to be watched. Any slip-up and All Might would meet his doom. All Might, the #1 hero, the symbol of peace, had to now impress his harshest critic, his #1 fan and student. The boy of the woman he intends to take on a date tonight. As they move into the living room, Izuku waves him to sit on the couch as he takes the chair opposite. He had moved the furniture to help emphasize the point he intends to make tonight. As he sits down, the advanced interrogation techniques kick in. First, he just stares, waiting for his prey to succumb to his nerves. On any other night, he is All Might and could stare down villains towering over buildings, monsters that shake the very souls of mortal men. Tonight, he is Toshinori Yagi, and he is terrified of a scrawny 15-year-old boy. So, he coughs, is Inko ready? Trying to find something to start a conversation with. I see, you're already on first-name basis then, Izuku coldly asked. His target needed to squirm. He had to prove himself. He couldn't answer the question. That was weakness. He had to ask them, and get answers. That was the most important thing. Well, the second most important. When did that happen? Not used to this type of confrontation, Yagi tried to slide back into his normal dialogue with the young man across from him. Young Midoriya, I don't see how that's important. He tried to happily banter with his proclaimed protege, not noticing the glare from Izuku. We're going to have a lovely time. Oh, you are you? Izuku couldn't back down. This was his mother after all. Where are you taking her then? He inquired. Too expensive, and it will seem like he's trying to buy her. Too cheap, and he doesn't respect her enough. We were going to go dancing. Inko loves dancing. As he laid out his plans for the evening. Not to a nightclub, though. He quickly corrected. Something about the way he was being watched, it made him feel small, like he was being analyzed by a professional. He couldn't slip up. He didn't want to know what would happen then. Then we would go to a restaurant, somewhere Italian. He waited for Izuku to nod, showing that he either approved or at least didn't disapprove. Yes, Italian is her favorite. Izuku unfolded his legs and leaned forward. So how are you going to get there? I notice your suit is more form-fitting, so I hope you don't expect to jump your way across town. She doesn't like heights. Izuku waiting for a flinch, finding none. Of course not. All Might began sweating, wondering if the AC was turned off or if he was really this nervous. He shouldn't be. He was All Might. But then again, he's never had to speak to anyone like this before. I got us a taxi. Oh, do you expect to not be able to drive? Izuku pulled at this thread, planning to do some drinking, maybe loosen her up. This was a harsh question. He had to know. Her safety was paramount. Yagi sputtered at this. No, I won't. I mean we won't, unless she wants to. But then, he stammered out, unsure how to answer this correctly. I will not touch a drop. She is free to have as much as she wants. I will maintain control the entire time. He prayed this was enough. I expect control. He nearly growled this out. She's not a heavy drinker, so a few might be all it takes. I expect you to be a gentleman. He placed his hands on his knees and took a needed breath of air. Because if you are not, he added darkly, they will never find your body. At this, Yagi shuddered, before he could do anything, let alone say anything. Ms. Midoriya entered. Oh, Izuku, stop teasing him. That's my job. She walked over and placed her hand on her son's head, ruffling his hair. But thank you for looking out for me, my big strong man, she crooned at her baby boy. Mom, I have to be sure. He whined, trying his best to recapture the intensity he had previously displayed. Oh, sweetie, it's just Yagi. She walked over and took her date's hand, pulling from the couch where he had been trapped before. We are just going to dance and have some food, nothing more. As she grabbed her coat, I still have to make sure he's not going to do anything. He rounded, following the pair to the door. At this, she was in a fit of laughter. Honey, we are both adults. We know what we are doing. Izuku had to keep going. I just need to be sure he's good enough. Inko's eyebrows perked up. Good enough for what, sweetie? She giggled. Izuku blushed and looked down. For you. He whispered, you're all I have. You're my mom, and you only deserve the best. Turning to him, she pulled him into a hug. "Oh, sweetie, that means so much that you would look out for me like that. I promise to be responsible and don't worry. I know how to keep a man in line." She winked at him, taking Tashinori by the arm and leading him out the door. "Don't stay up too late. I know you have school in the morning." As the door closed, Izuku moved to the window to watch them climb into the taxi and take off. Once they turned the corner, he placed a radio in his ear. "Mama Bird is on the move. Are all pieces in place?" As he moved back to his room to grab his surveillance gear, specially made for underground heroes. "Copy hat trick, speed freak in pursuit, maintaining cover, over." Came over the line. "Second that, chemistry and ghost at Point Alpha, awaiting arrival, over." "Floater and Big Bang on standby, over." Copy. "Hat trick moving to provide extraction should the operation go sideways, over." Author's notes. Here it is, what you have all been waiting for. The beginning of the Inko X All Might, date night. I am going to be slow and methodical with this. Like all romance, it must be measured, paced, and simply succulent. I will have to compound that with an intense spy mission in the background as well. These will be short parts, but they will all be taken over one night, broken up by locales and events. Now to touch on a guest review for Chapter 8 of AMS. To Random Dude. I was trying to make it seem like Kaminari, while not a perv like Mineta, is still sort of the average teenage boy. So he see Midoriya, who has performed well in class and seemingly is attractive, would like to know more of how he did that and if it's something that can be explained. In turn, Kirishima was simply adding himself into the conversation, but I hope that it came across that Fumikage was just more curious on Midoriya's ability to form connections with people, since I kinda had canonied that the more monstrous or sinister-looking quirks tended to not have as many friends, and that is why he tended to more secluded activities, like occultism. Monoma was really the only one I was trying to make seem offensive about his views of the girls. But if I didn't get that across properly, I'm sorry. I'll try better next time. As for the bullying, there are in fact a few more subtle ways to bully. I tried to hint that Todoroki is a bit of a hair trigger at his father's hero name, which while the word endeavor won't come up to much in casual conversation, the students who speak a more proper dialect would use it somewhat, so he previously only had to deal with that word around his dad. As for why no one intervened, I had tried again to make it a little subtle. They are a hero school, learning to stop crimes. They are still children, and bullying is something that is a sort of delicate situation. No punches were thrown, only harsh words, so who should escalate? And there is another important aspect. Dealing with haters, not everything they do as heroes will get cheers. So dealing with negative reactions from people is also very important. Don't want a Superman where the moment someone says he could have done better, he flies off to Antarctica to brood for a year or so. Monoma is in a weird way helping them learn. Just punching someone who bad-mouths you will get you in more trouble than them. I do understand your point with the training. It's important they do spar to get better. But I'm pulling a page from the first canon day. Aizawa mentioned that during his testing that most of them have been forbidden from using their quirks at school for sports and stuff. So he tested them so they could learn their limits in a sense. All Might's training doesn't make sense. After a single day of just testing the limits of their quirks, they are nowhere ready to use them on each other in direct combat. Because officially using quirks without a license is illegal, and they can't acknowledge any unofficial practice and training the students might have had. So it made more sense for them to treat everyone as if it was their first day, and to have them go easy. I know that kinda clashes with the entrance exam I used, but most of the students didn't take the combat test, so using it on other people may be a new concept to them. And lastly, no, your barrage of comments didn't scare me off. I quite like them actually. More in-depth responses allow me to find new angles and try to make sure I maintain a level of quality that people can enjoy, and allows me to also properly explain my reasoning and thought process when writing. Also, leave some brutal reviews. I need to get better at schmoozing. Since I'm a hopeless dude, let's make sure I can put some tears in the eyes, one way or another. Chapter 10, In a Beef Stew. At the end of the buzzer, the students who were captured started pulling themselves up, and everyone began making their way to the exit, and the participants were discussing amongst each other what they thought of the exercise. When they reached the remaining groups and teachers back at the staging area, the group was bombarded with questions. Okay, students, let's back off and begin the review. That should answer most of the questions anyway, commented Blood King as he tried to calm down a bunch of excited teenagers. First, we will begin to discuss the important topic, How did Wonder Team? He sarcastically said, win the exercise? Izuku, if you would, explain how you got the flag out. He requested. It was something everyone except All Might seemed to be questioning. Well, as Izuku tried to start, then he suddenly realized everyone was focused on him. Shrinking back a little, I put Kodai-san into the crowd. He whispered out, I've been able to disappear myself for a while now, so I figured I could disappear her as well, and sort of put her out of the area so she could reach through the hat and take the flag. As the students pondered and tried to figure out what his quirk was, their thoughts were interrupted by a raucous laughter. Wahaha, just like the microwave, young Midoriya. All Might burst out, in one place and out the other. He moved over to Izuku to pat him on the back. As the rest of the class looked at Izuku as if he had just grown a second, third, and fourth head, those who were listening to his story at the entrance exam remembered him saying he was trained by a pro. Now before we start the next group, it's important to reflect on our actions and what didn't work and what did so. What are some ways any of you might have improved? Asked Aizawa. As was mentioned earlier, learning from a failure is just as important on succeeding. We will begin with Hananuki-san, picking a student at random. What could you have done better? Well, it's a bit embarrassing, but I should have learned to work with my team better. Midoriya-san saw us for about a minute or so, and already could tell we weren't working together nor to our fullest potential. It's kind of disheartening that after having my quirk for so long, I never thought to try to use it in conjunction with other quirks. As he tapered off his response, a few people started thinking of how their quirks can be used with other quirks to make them stronger. That's a good response, and since you worked with Shiozaki-san, we'll go to her next. Aizawa continued. This group seemed to be less likely to disappoint him. He wouldn't admit that, but still they had potential. Hananuki-san was right. I never considered ways that my quirk can be used to supplement the powers of others, so our teamwork was not great. It was really admirable that Midoriya-san would be so willing to share advice on how to improve ourselves, even if he was competing against us. Shiozaki finished the thought that Hananuki started. As the rest of the students commented on their own thoughts for the exercise, one overarching theme was apparent: they needed to get better at working together. The remaining groups began thinking of how to work together. So as the other three games went, the teams got more and more in sync with each other and started trying maneuvers. That didn't always work, but it got them experimenting. At the end of the class, it didn't matter which teams won anymore. It was about how fun it was to use their quirks with people who they hoped in a few years to call friend. Well, students, I hoped you learned the important lesson we were trying to teach you, All Might stated with much vigor. So next time when you get paired off, it becomes second nature to assess the quirks you have available to create a winning strategy. Now run along and enjoy the rest of your day. For those of you in the dorms, it will be a good time to finish setting up your rooms. As the students filter out, with All Might waving them off, he was suddenly cornered by the three other instructors. Seriously, All Might, what is that kid? Inquired Aizawa. At the very least, he doesn't have a traditional quirk. Yeah. He's a nice kid, but do you really expect us to believe the explanation that he's magic? Scoffed Midnight. All Might shut the door and, after making sure they were alone, exhaled and shifted to his natural state. That's what he's always said. When I first met him, the way he described his quirk, it reminded me of someone from my past, someone very dangerous. The serious tone he was taking with his colleagues caused them to shudder. Anyone All Might would consider very dangerous is not someone they wanted to tangle with. That's why I started training him. He was already very powerful, naturally inquisitive with the world, and a bit headstrong. He seems like a good kid. Hasn't given me reason to suspect him of anything. But there was always a but. They were pros, they knew this. I did some digging into the family history. Mother works as a grocer. Met her on a few occasions. Nothing out of the ordinary. He let out a sigh. The father, however, is an entirely different story. I was told by Mrs. Midoriya that he was just working abroad. That topic gets avoided if I ever bring it up with Izuku. I tried using some contacts to track him down. Bank deposits, company names. Came back with nothing. A monthly deposit from child services shows it looks like child support. But working that backwards gets me nothing. It's shell company after shell company. All Might gives a moment to let the information settle. Nedzu-san has been helping me sift through some of this, but it keeps leading to dead ends, abandoned warehouses and office buildings that haven't been used since pre-quirk days. This guy is a ghost. All I have is the name Hisashi Midoriya, which, to be honest, concerns me. It seems like his name is a joke. It's been a while since I last saw you. I just hope I'm overcomplicating things, and the dad is just at worst a deadbeat. Otherwise, he begins to trail off. The world is going to go through some very tough times. Despite how well the day's class went, there came a separate problem: dinner. As the residents of the dorm started to remember, the school was only providing breakfast and lunch for them. This led to a few discussions on what that even meant, mostly about if they even knew how to cook or if microwave dinners would suffice. The discussions were starting to get a bit louder as they each tried to roll into one another, until a loud thumping noise broke through and caused them all to stop. "Thank you, Jairu-san," said Yairozu. "Now I think we all have a general idea of what the discussions we've been having are all about." Noticing nods around the room. However, that is just a smaller part of a much bigger problem we will be facing. As more people started to settle in around her, patiently waiting to hear her suggestion. "We are a bunch of teenagers together in one, albeit large, house. For the foreseeable future, we are going to be living aside one another. So we need to develop some rules, or else this won't work." After an hour of discussion, they created a fair way to divide up the weekly chores and daily tasks. The next morning, everyone had mostly settled in at the dorms, and the general classes weren't too different from what they were doing at their middle schools. Except these classes were much more advanced. To be the top school in the country, they couldn't just produce the best heroes, they also had to produce the best minds. This led to a few of the students who were already struggling in the classes. It was agreed upon that study groups would be necessary to maintain good grades, since if they did not perform well academically, they could be removed from the hero course as well. After lunch, they were instructed by their homeroom teachers to head to the gymnasium for the rescue portion of their class. So a few of the students who made it into the hero course using that category were excited to see what they would be doing. Since their homeroom teachers mentioned not to take their hero costumes, this raised a few eyebrows from the students. When the students all entered, they noticed that they did not have All Might, Midnight, or either of their homeroom teachers. Instead, it was the school nurse, Recovery Girl, 13, and Ectoplasm. They were each standing around dummies on the ground and had different sized and shaped red bags marked with white crosses. As the students began to mill about, Recovery Girl spoke up, "May I please have everyone's attention?" The chatter died down and everyone focused on the short geriatric. "Thank you. Today is the first of many lessons that I consider more important than what you will learn from that meathead, because this course is to teach you something very important. Principal Nedzu calls this the rescue course, which is an apt name." She toddled over to a dummy and bag, her cane clacking on the wooden floor as she went. It is very easy to forget that after the punches are done being thrown and the last of the rubble falls, there are still people that need help. And as heroes, you will be trained to help. As she stood next to the first dummy, she continued her speech. "Principal Nedzu was right to show you that video on the first day. There were too many heroes and not enough heroics. Just because they thought they couldn't do anything to stop the villain doesn't mean there wasn't work for them to be doing. In today's lesson with me, you are going to learn CPR and what you can expect to find in different emergency kits. Please spread out to groups, and then we will begin the lesson." It was roughly an hour and a half later when the students moved on to the second part of the lesson. "Now, we can go over the different types of emergency kits." As she gestured to the different bags, each of these has an increasing number of items in them. It is not expected of many heroes to carry something like this, as she poked a large duffel bag with a D-sized oxygen cylinder sticking out, since that would be carried by emergency services. However, as she shuffled to the smaller bags, these are simple first aid kits that you could pick up at local stores, and you will know how to use something like this to do simple field dressings. So as the students each got one of the small bags, Ectoplasm created a few copies of himself that went around and allowed the students to patch him up. After learning how to properly apply a tourniquet in different dressings, Recovery Girl stepped aside so 13 could lead the next half of the class. "Thank you for that very informative and hands-on lesson, Recovery Girl. I see there are more students who have taken an interest in learning more about this portion of being a hero," said the slightly digitized voice of the space-themed hero. "I am 13. I cover a different part of the rescue course. I specialize in search and rescue. As a result, a lot of what Recovery Girl will teach you, I put into practice on a regular basis." As she moved around the room, her lecture continued. What I must deal with is something that many people may not remember, the debris left behind after a catastrophe and accident. Noticing a few confused looks, she knew what they wanted to ask. Yes, it may sound strange, but much of my job is actually not cleaning up after heroes. With UA and the other hero school turning out better trained and educated heroes, property damage from fights with criminals is down quite a bit over the last decade. But things like earthquakes, flood, or other accidents, those can happen all the time or can be very predictable. So what I want to cover is less hands-on for now, but I want to show you some videos of different types of disasters so you may begin to familiarize yourselves with them, because a flood and a fire have very different and some very similar threats to yourself and those around you. The rest of the class was spent seeing how some situations can be more threatening than people realize. As the class broke off with the boarded students heading to the dorm, conversations about the day's lessons started, and not just about the hero course. As some of the students paired off to form study groups, the group assigned to prepare the night's dinner, which consisted of Midoriya, Tokoyami, and Kirishima, got to talking about the last few days' events. "Sue," Kirishima trailed, trying to begin a conversation. "Can we talk about the whole All Might knowing you thing?" While chopping up onions for the stew. "Huh. Oh, that," Izuku mumbled nonchalantly. "It's not a big deal, just sorta happened, you know." "No, actually, I don't," Kirishima retorted. "How does one just casually know the #1 hero?" "If it is related to the story you told after the written exam, that would explain many unusual things," Tokoyami added, while stirring in the carrots and potatoes. "However, that doesn't explain the whys." What do you mean the whys?" Izuku asked, doing his best not to make eye contact. He could never lie if someone was looking at him straight on. He was busy adding the salt and pepper to the cooking beef chunks. The smell of simmering vegetables was wafting about the kitchen. "Isn't it about time to add the time?" "Hee. We have already added all the necessary spice, Midoriya-san, so please do not avoid the question, or at least do a better job of it," Tokoyami dryly stated. "What I mean by the why is, why did All Might choose to train you? Even if there is much experience to learn, your quirk is significantly different to his own. He should know others with a closer related quirk to your own to provide more focused training." As the pot began boiling, Kirishima moved to close the door to the kitchen. "There, now it's just the three of us." Kirishima leaned on the wall and faced the other two occupants. "Dude, if you don't want to tell us what your quirk is, I can get that. It might be one of those. If you know what it is, you know how to beat it deals. But if you got an inside with one of the top pros, you need to be honest. Because if you aren't," he sighed, "a lot of people are going to start questioning how you got here, and if you can't explain that, you are going to have some problems with people trusting you." Izuku could only let out the breath he was holding. "You're right, All Might and it's complicated. Everything I told people about the slime villain and getting trained by a pro, it's true though. I just kept a few secrets, since they aren't mine. I can't tell anyone. Do you understand?" Putting the meat in the pot, setting it to simmer, and then wiping his hands on a towel. "Yes, it is understandable to hold a secret for someone else. But once it gets out, as all secrets do, where will that leave you, the holder of the secret?" Tokoyami added ominously, glancing at Kirishima. "I'm not sure how much I can tell you, but I'll try. All Might is a new part of my life, so is all of this." As he stirred the pot. "What do you mean all of this?" "The school, the structure, the people?" Kirishima questioned. "The quirks," Izuku answered. At this comment, both Tokoyami and Kirishima tilted their heads. "I guess I should explain a bit, huh?" Seeing his two peers nodding, he knew he would have to explain. "Might want to get comfortable then." Izuku gestured to the boys. Seeing as they complied, he started his story. "I'm not like you guys, everyone else out there," he motioned to the common room. "You and they grew up with a quirk. I grew up around them. I got mine when I was 12. "So your quirk triggered when you 12? Asked Kirishima. Izuku shook his head at this. "No, I got my quirk when I was 12. I didn't have one. 100% certified, quirkless." Kirishima and Tokoyami's eyes widened. "How? You can't just..." The bird-headed boy's demeanor and mannerisms failing under the information that drastically clashed with the current understanding of the world. "Yeah, it's not as crazy as it sounds," Izuku continued. Okay, so it is, but I guess it's. Okay, this might be tougher to get. For as long as I can remember, I wanted to be a hero. Tie a blanket around my neck and pretend to be the number one. The boys nodded. That was common behavior for kids. They all wanted to be a hero, so they all used to do that when they were younger. Then I turned 4 and waited. He paused and waited. Then I turned 5 and I still didn't have my amazing power, the one that would let me be a hero, let me help and save people. So my parents took me to the quirk specialist, that maybe mine was a mutation and we just needed to find the right trigger for it. He began chuckling. I didn't have one. At this, Izuku began a full-blown fit of laughter. Concerned Kirishima moved closer to Izuku, but the freckled boy just put up his hand and tapered off his raucous giggles. It's funny, really. That point was what changed so much in my life. I lost all my friends, my self-esteem, and even my dad, just because I didn't have what everyone else did. He wiped a tear from his eye. Now both boys were concerned but didn't know what to do. How does one help someone having an emotional breakdown and an existential crisis at the same time? And I just didn't give up. Everyone took pity on the poor quirkless kid, even my mom. He hopped up on the countertop. I started researching ways people got quirks, watching heroes and villains duke it out to analyze their abilities. Got really good at it too. I'll show you my notes sometime. I even got some on our classmates. Seeing the looks of discomfort on their faces, he clarified. Not in a creepy way, of course, but remember how I told Hananuki-san and Shiozaki-san how to better work together? Stuff like that. It's more like a practical application of a quirk doctor. This let the boys relax as they didn't need to worry about their classmate being a deranged stalker as much. So, I kept looking and I found some interesting information. I can't say what I found or where I found it, but it led me somewhere and I got my own powers. Then a few years later I met All Might. It was weird circumstances, but it's kind of cool too. I know things about him and he knows things about me. Because of that I can't tell those secrets, but you're right, Tokoyami-san. There would be other pros better suited to help me learn, but for some reason he kept me aside, trained me specifically. Izuku got off the counter and moved the pot off the stove to let the stew cool down. I don't want people to think I got in because of him. He helped me, but in a way so did everyone who pitted me, bullied me, or just ignored me. That drove me to want to be a hero, and I learned not to give up. So even if All Mights and my paths never crossed, I think I would still have ended up here, or at least still doing this. Both boys were shocked at the revelation, but amazed at the resolution the small boy had. They couldn't comprehend what it would be like to not have a quirk and to struggle with how everyone treated him, only to still turn into the outstanding young man who is currently top of their class. That's quite impressive, chirped Tokoyami. Kirishima could only shake his head. Impressive? Dude, Kirishima stuttered. That's phenomenal. Amazing. It's so manly. You gotta tell us more. Kirishima was practically begging for Izuku to keep talking. It's really not. I just never quit. Never really knew how. As he moved about the kitchen, Izuku was pulling out silverware and bowls for the stew. Cranking the oven to a high temperature, he placed a long loaf of bread, seasoned with herbs and butter. And time went on, then I got my power. Had to read my book a lot. Book? Queried Tokoyami. What do you mean, book? Yeah, is it a really advanced quirk textbook? Kirishima guessed. Maybe has some obscure knowledge on quirks that makes sense of your quirk. Or is it more like an owner's manual and the hospital forgot to pack it when you were born? He laughed out. Hee, that's actually a really good guess, Kirishima-san. Izuku chuckled. Put them together and it's close to what it is, but also kind of not. The only other person, besides my mom and the person I got it from, who knows about it, is Kachin. But to be fair, he just wants to take it and destroy it. What? That's preposterous. A book that provides incredible knowledge that was able to teach you how to use your quirk to such a professional level, Tokoyami squawked out. To want to destroy such a thing is inconceivable. Well, it's not like he wanted to burn it because of the information, Izuku added. Honestly, he didn't what it was or what was in it. He just didn't want me to have it. Wow, dude. This Kachin sounds like a real jerk. Kirishima stated. He didn't like bullies and this Kachin sounded like a bully. Also, Kachin sounded familiar to him. Tokoyami shared this sentiment by nodding his head. Like I told Momo-chan and Itsuka-chan. unknowingly switching to first names for the two girls he told part of his history to. He's changed quite a bit already. The book was more of a goal for him to work towards. If he could get it, that meant he beat me. So for about 3 years, I did everything I could to keep it safe. Izuku turned to the oven to turn it off, so the bread could finish baking. Think of it as an arms race. I learned new tricks to keep it safe, and he developed new techniques to try to get it. He actually helped train me faster than All Might did, believe it or not. Now the two boys were incredulous, a schoolyard bully, a better teacher than the #1 professional hero. What are you guys looking at me like that for? You think this boy, who was your tormentor, was a more effective means of making your quirk more powerful than the private, one-on-one, secret training you received from the greatest hero of our generation? Tokoyami asked quietly, barely able to comprehend how his understanding of the world changed so drastically in just a few days, solely because of the actions and words of one, albeit incredible, boy. Well, yeah, when I first got my quirk, I could do no more than simple levitation, then I got a few small tricks down, but Kachin, he really pushed me. I got lucky the first time he tried to blow it up. Teacher walked in and I knew I couldn't learn at my own pace. I had to learn at a hero's pace, one that Kachin always held himself to. For the next few years, it was always him escalating and me defending. Izuku pulled the loaf of bread from the oven. Nothing like fresh bread to sop up the last remaining stew in the bowl. Then I started training with All Might, Izuku, moving to the next part of his story. This part interested both boys immensely, the secrets of personal training with the symbol of peace. It was definitely different. He had me clean the Dagoba Municipal Park beach of all the garbage that washes up on the shore. He began chuckling again. Well, not all of it. Some of that stuff was a bit too heavy to move on my own, getting sidetracked. Izuku coughed, clearing his throat. So for 10 months, I worked clean the beach and practiced my tricks, but I really only developed a couple of new ones. After about the last year, I haven't even opened another lid on my trunk. Both of the boys listening were having the same thought. What does he mean, trunk? So that's how I know I progressed more with Kachin than I did with All Might. Concluding his tale, he began serving up bowls of the stew. Oh, Bakugo-san, Kirishima suddenly blurted out. That's who you mean by Kachin. Was going to go crazy if I couldn't get that. Seriously, I fought the guy just yesterday. How could I forget that? Wait, a member of this school, Tokoyami inquired, is or was your childhood bully/rival? Oh, now don't you start that too. Izuku chided. I already had this discussion with Itsuka-chan and Momo-chan. Him being here is good for him, and I really think it will help him change his ways for the better. So don't go reporting his and my past to the teachers, unless he goes back to bullying people. He's just brash, not a villain. Both boys could agree that what happened was between Bakugo and Midoriya, so they decided to let the two of them handle it themselves, unless it spilled over to becoming everyone else's problem. As 3 boys walked out of the kitchen with the many bowls on serving platters, 2 of them realized their time at this school was going to be very different than they had imagined. Author's notes. First thing, sorry for misnaming the Chapter 8 with a confusing name. Imogen Heap, what was I thinking? Their song was hide and seek. Not what I had. So I had a brain fart, and as soon as I published it, I realized my mistake. Second thing, I am retarded. The order of poll choices is not important. When displayed, the site will randomly order the choices to remove any bias by the creator. I apparently cannot read, so my poll is all messed up in order. Which was not cool, by the way. Bad website, the order mattered, not because of bias, but because now it doesn't make sense. Grr. Next, loving the reactions to Date Night Part 1. It will be a multi-part miniseries that will be updated when I can think of the proper way to, as the kids these days say, make the panties drop. So I will add more, once I can get the best way. I have an idea. Additionally, in the timeline it has no concrete place, so it could be before or after the All Might v All for One deal, which I will definitely change up, don't worry, but in canon that was when All Might's identity became known, so I need to make the language ambiguous so it doesn't become a, how did this happen in Date Night if this hasn't happened? I'm not going to allow continuity errors. Grammar, spelling, moral, immoral, immortal errors, but not continuity, no sir. Now for some direct responses. 2 Random Doodah, one of my most prolific reviewers. Some good thoughts. Regarding Date Night, I will take into consideration the lead up. Definitely going to do some strong hints from a certain sultry housewife. As for your thoughts about the locker room, yes, there is going to be a bit of air of discomfort between the girls and the guys. It will be brought up later. I intend to have some of the girls confront the boys about it. Thinking Pony should lead that group, most incapable of adequately explaining their grievance, makes sense. You are right on the money with the sports festival, though. The race is perfect for showing versatility in usage and thought, while I will change the cavalry up. The one-on-ones is staying. I have some really cool ideas about large blocks of ice. To Tombs 456, yes. A bunch of non-combatants would make excellent targets for those who have no problems hurting or killing children. Mwahaha. Someone is getting seriously hurt on that day. To Chunin 33, the date night chapters will not have a definitive release, but I will try to not forget about them. I'm hoping that I could put one out after the USJ, but at least before the sports festival. To Experjarly JX, thank you. I hope the role reversal would be well received, that Izuku would be the one to play the dad role to All Might. I thought it was light-hearted enough, but still had the same touch her and you die threat that every potential boyfriend gets, but with enough feelings that it was wholesome. So now on to the discussion for next chapter, Chapter 10. It will be the utility class, so Izuku will make use of the notebook, but another book gets to make an appearance as well. Then they have their first weekend. Yay! Sometime in the dorms, maybe I can squeeze in some outside UA time with everyone's favorite illegal firework. Touch on some background details for the upcoming Monday. I guarantee no one's safety. If it strikes me, I may even kill some kids. If I don't, Stain's body count is going to be a bit higher this time. It might still be. Not being friends with some people could be detrimental to one's health. But Monday will most likely be a direct tonal shift in the story. Who PTSD FTW. Haha deuces.